I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:00 p.m. on this 8th day of March 2022. We welcome all of those present with us this evening in chambers, as well as our viewing and listening public. As always, the public is able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. With that, Madam Clerk, will you please announce those school board members in attendance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in school board chambers is Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Felton, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Hughes, Ms. Manning, Ms. Owens, and Ms. Riggs.
Thank you, and Mrs. Weems is absent tonight due to a personal health matter. So I will now ask all those present to join me in a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will now turn the program over to Vice Chair Mrs. Melnick for the recognition part of the program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, we as a board are pleased to announce the school board recognition recipients for March 8th, 2022. Mrs. Manning.
This evening, we would like to recognize Mike Benzel, who has been inducted into the Virginia chapter of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame for his lifetime service to wrestling. Mr. Benzel has worked at Kellam High School for the past 30 years as a science teacher and wrestling coach. His wrestling career began at Norview High School when he was in the 8th grade. In 1975, he was named the VHSL 167-pound state wrestling champion, and he went on to become the 179-pound Atlantic Coast Conference champion while wrestling for the University of North Carolina. After graduating from UNC, he began his coaching career, helping countless athletes achieve region and state titles during his tenure. He's been named Coach of the Year multiple times through different coaching and wrestling associations. People who know Mr. Benzel describe him as kind with an infectious smile, a role model, a team player both in the classroom and on the mat, and the ultimate coach and mentor. Mr. Benzel is said to live every day and situation with integrity, honesty, and a limitless work ethic. Mr. Benzel is seen as a cornerstone of Kellam High School athletics for all that he has accomplished and his continued commitment to Knights wrestling. Congratulations to you, Mr. Benzel. We are honored to recognize you this evening. Congratulations on a fantastic job well done.
Up next, we would like to recognize Roming Shen with Ocean Lakes High School for her achievement of earning a perfect score on the Scholastic Aptitude Test, more commonly known as the SAT. Currently a junior at the Math and Science Academy, Ms. Shen is described as intelligent, honorable, well-rounded, kind, compassionate, and professional. She has been a dedicated and committed honor student at Ocean Lakes since she began her freshman year and currently holds a grade point average over 4.0, a testament to her great academic ethics. Ms. Shen plans to apply to Virginia Tech, the University of Virginia, MIT, and to her top choice, Columbia University, where she hopes to major in computer science. She has not only excelled in academics, she's proven that being a well-rounded student is also important. She is the secretary for the Ocean Lakes High School SCA, treasurer for Mu Alpha Theta, and a math instructor for Mathnasium. Oops, more. No, not yet. There's more. In addition to all of this, her other accomplishments include a first place recognition for the Christopher Newport University Regional High School Math Competition and a perfect score of 5 on the AP Computer Science A exam. In her free time, She enjoys making wire jewelry, playing the violin, and hiking. Congratulations to you, Miss Shen. You have accomplished so much, and we are excited to see you grow as a young adult and continue on your academic journey.
Next, we have the honor of recognizing Joshua Darrow with Tallwood High School for his accomplishment of earning a perfect score on the American College Testing Exam, more commonly known as the ACT. Currently a senior at Tallwood High School, Mr. Darrow has not decided on a college university yet, as he is waiting to hear back from schools. However, his number one school is Dartmouth. He has also applied to Swarthmore College, Harvard University, University of Virginia, and the College of William and Mary. He plans to earn his MBA once he enters college. Mr. Darrow not only has an impressive academic record, he has received the Tallwood High School Gold Award for Community Service, serving more than 160 hours of community service just while in high school. He participates in the Tallwood Symphonic Band, Wind Ensemble, and is a marching band drum major. He is also a member of Boy Scouts BSA Troop 587 as a Life Scout and was the captain for the World Affairs Council Academic World Quest. People that know him describe him as ambitious, diligent, passionate, and motivated. Additionally, his score is so impressive that he received a letter from ACT stating that out of more than 1 million students who took the ACT, only 4,055 students earned a perfect score of 36. That is less than 0.5%. Congratulations, Mr. Darrow, on your outstanding job. Well done.
Madam Chair, this concludes the recognitions for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, congratulations to all. That brings us to adoption of tonight's agenda. Are there any modifications? Okay, hearing none, a motion to approve. Mrs. Riggs, a second. Mrs. Hughes, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. No superintendent report this evening, so this brings us to approval of meeting minutes, and we have a collection here. So we will go in chronological order. A is the February 8th, 2022 regular school board meeting. Are there any modifications? All right, a motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin, and a second, Mrs. Manning. All in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
B, February 15th, 2022 special school board meeting. Any modifications to these minutes? Okay, motion to approve. Mrs. Holtz, a second. Mrs. Anderson, all in favor, show a raised hand, please.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Item C, February 22nd, 2022 regular school board meeting. Any modifications? Okay. Motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin, and a second. Mrs. Riggs, all in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
And finally, item D is the March 2022 special school board meeting. Any modification to these minutes? Motion to approve. Mrs. Melnick, and a second, Mrs. Anderson. All in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
No,
We have 9 ayes,
okay, all abstaining.
I was not present.
and we have 1 abstention, Mrs. Manning, because she was not present. So the motion did pass 9-0, 1 abstention.
All right, thank you. So that quickly brings us to the public comments portion of the meeting. The school board will now hear comments on matters relevant to pre-K to 12, public education in Virginia Beach and the business of the school board and school division from citizens and delegations who signed up with the school board clerk prior to noon today. Persons not called to the podium to address the school board are asked to be respectful of speakers so the school board and persons observing the meeting are able to hear and observe each speaker's comments. Persons signed up to speak will be called up 3 at a time, and we ask that you line up. For speakers who are outside of board chambers, the staff will bring them into the hall to line up. In-person student speakers will be called first, followed by student speakers participating through Zoom. Each speaker will begin speaking once their name is called. As a reminder, speakers have 3 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. The clock begins running once the speaker's at the podium or the clerk has called the online speaker to unmute. It's recommended that speakers refer to the online time tracker to keep track of your time. Once your time has expired, we ask that you cease your remarks, leave the podium, and allow the next person to speak. Speakers are responsible for being in chambers or online when they're called to speak. And if a speaker is not present when called to speak or not online or unable to unmute, the board at its sole discretion may allow the speaker to speak at the end of the public comment session. Members of the audience will not be recognized to assist an online speaker with making online comments. As always, the school board invites the public to submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. And I will make the note that our bylaws provide for a pause at 8 o'clock with speakers to get to information items, but given that tonight we have no information items, we will just proceed with all our speakers, and then at that time we'll get to our consent agenda. So with that, Madam Clerk, would you please introduce the first speaker of the evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker is Ure Emajuru, then Jana Staltesiak, and then Gianna Lathan.
Welcome.
Hello. I have a friend who dropped out of the ESL program because she wanted to achieve an advanced diploma. She came from a South American country and is one of the smartest people I know. When I first met her, I attempted to use my Spanish foreknowledge of the language, but even with the barrier, we became friends. I contacted her again regarding her opinions on the ESL program, and she talked about how they are treated unfairly by teachers and don't have the same opportunity for high-level education as their fellow students. In my classes with them, students who are bilingual take the time to work with these students and translate everything for the other students. I've observed them take quality class time to explain lesson material, and all of this is done out of the kindness of their hearts. I truly believe a deep evaluation needs to be done in the program, with inputs from students in it, as well as students who have left it. In no way are the students in this program unsustainable. What is unsustainable is a system that continues to fail them. During this time expressing my opinion to the board, I've been told by board members and parents that I'm a liar. I perceive everything as a microaggression, have had voice recordings of my voice played, and I've been called a dumb kid. And with all of that, I come back. I'm a first-generation American with parents who instill the values of education in me. And from the words of Angela Davis, I say education is liberation. But it is so important to have a board and foster an environment where we are comfortable in expressing those ideals. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jana Staltesiak, then Gianna Lathan, then Kenza Zutoni.
And just a reminder to the assembly to kindly refrain from applause. Okay. Welcome.
Hey, it's me again. So the first time I spoke here was about 3 years ago, and I came to speak about the importance of diversity on our school board and the importance of making our school board look more like our schools. Thank you for proving my point, but I really wish you hadn't. Now, I've heard that there are people that are saying that I've been brainwashed or that someone tells you what to say. They're wrong. I come from a long line of strong women. When Hitler was taking over Germany, my great-great-grandmother took her 8-year-old daughter, my Nana, to the United States. My Nana didn't speak any English and talked about how hard it was coming to a country where she was viewed as the enemy. And so I am following in their footsteps, and when I come here again and again to ask you all to make sure everyone is welcome in our schools. Stop being mean to our black kids. Stop being mean to our trans kids. Stop being mean to kids with health issues. Stop being mean to kids that are born in other countries. And stop thinking that they are bad or dangerous just because they're not like you. This time, I brought a book to help me make my point. Hopefully it does not get banned. I'll read it as much as I can until my time is up. And this book is called All Are Welcome. Pencils sharpened in their case, bells are ringing, let's make haste. School's beginning, dreams to chase, all are welcome here. No matter how you start your day, what you wear when you play, or if you come from far away, all are welcome here. In our classroom, safe and sound, fears are lost and hope is found. Raise your hand, we'll go around, all are welcome here. Gather now, let's all take part. We'll play music, we'll make art. We'll share stories from the heart. All are welcome here. Time for lunch, what a spread. A dozen different kinds of bread. Pass it around till everyone's fed. All are welcome here. Open doors, rush outside. We will swing, we will slide. We'll have fun side by side. All are welcome here. We're part of a community. Our strength is our diversity. A shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. We will learn from each other. Special talents we'll uncover. There's a big world to discover. All are welcome here.
30 seconds.
So much to learn, so much to do. And when the busy day is through, can't wait to come back, start anew. All are welcome here. Head for home and get some rest, and greet tomorrow ready and fresh. Our time together is the best. All are welcome here. I'm going to finish there. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Our next speaker is Gianna Lathan, then Kenza Zutoni, and then Aaron Arlanza.
Welcome. Good evening, school board. Deciding to speak tonight was a very hard decision. When speaking to my mother, an immigrant from Panama, whose mother tongue is Spanish, my mother asked me not to speak tonight in fear of me. She stated that people are just mean, and people are mean, especially to us. I want to apologize to my mother, who is watching, because I am disobeying her. But she allowed me to because we both understand the complexity of a hurtful statement made by a school board member. I recall a time when in elementary school, my abuela used to bring me lunch every Friday and sit with me and my friends. My abuela is an immigrant here from Panama who packed up everything she knew and loved to live the American dream. My abuela's first language is not English, which caused her to have an accent. I remember times when my friends would mock my abuela and ridicule her because her English wasn't good. ESL is sustainable. Whether or not Ms. Manning's comments were simply out of the lack of knowledge surrounding the ESL program, ESL will always be sustainable, no matter the race or ethnic background of the child. Americans love to use the expression that the United States is a melting pot of many cultures and different ethnic backgrounds. And that phrase especially applies to this area and city because of our very own NATO and military presence. Ms. Manning's comments weren't only hurtful to me, but many other ESL students who felt like they're not teachable. Now, I'm not here to tell Ms. Manning she needs to resign or be fired, but I'm here to inform this school board and tell Ms. Manning that we all have a little self-reflection to do. Ms. Manning probably didn't expect this kind of reaction after making a Facebook post, but in reality, I believe it has benefited you. Now all the school board and yourself understand the complexity of a hurtful statement and how it can impact others, especially our students. ESL children aren't any different from any other student that is taught in VBCPS. If you truly believe these children are different, then why? Is it because they come from a different background or speak a different language at home? Or is it because of the xenophobia you might exhibit against immigrants? It is important to make children, especially children who have immigrated from a different country, as comfortable and welcomed as we can. It is not welcoming when we are saying that these children aren't sustainable. I understand that ESL budgeting getting higher and the dire need for
30
ESL
seconds.
teachers. But this does not give us the excuse to say South Americans and Central Americans aren't sustainable to teach. This is a learning experience for all of us, and I just want to emphasize the hurt I feel as a first-generation American and a Panamanian woman because we are sustainable. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kenza Zutoni, then Aaron Alonza, then Lucia Morton.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Kenza Zatuni, and I'll start by saying it is both a privilege and a drawback to be a second-generation immigrant. Though I might feel from time to time that I lack proximity to my cultures, being Filipino and Moroccan, for looking and sounding ethnically ambiguous, it's truly incomparable to the hardships of assimilation faced by my parents, grandparents, and all those with English as their second language. There's an intense pressure to conform within our homogenizing American society, thanks to a pervading intolerance towards differences. So to top off the appearance-based discrimination faced by many, you're expected to do it all, without an accent or the ethnic-sounding names. In the words of a former ESL and foreign language teacher currently working with ESL students in a statewide capacity who'd like to stay anonymous, ESL students have been among the most respectful and dedicated children I've ever encountered in my career in education. In my experience, they are unfailingly courteous, hardworking, and positive. Wonderful role models for their classmates. They have unique perspectives and experiences that give their classmates an insight into life in the majority of the world that is not the U.S. This can only benefit us all. In my experience, students coming from diverse backgrounds have done nothing but enhance the process of learning. They show a willingness to share new perspectives and set wonderful examples of respect and perseverance for their peers. But this shouldn't matter. It's almost surprising that within an international community like ours, we'd have to defend the integrity of ELLs when every child within our city is deserving and should be entitled to a quality education that fosters a sense of belonging. Moving forward, we must continue to invest in the program and do whatever we can to better support the teachers who make it possible. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Aaron Alonza, then Lucia Morton, and then Kalisa Blunt.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Alonza. I'm a senior in the Legal Studies Academy at First Colonial High School, as well as a citywide SCA chairman. To be concise, I appear in front of the board because I am angered, frustrated, and concerned regarding Ms. Manning's recent comments about ESL program in the district. As a child of Filipino immigrants, I was fortunate enough to grow up speaking English in my household, not needing the ESL services offered by my elementary school. However, many of my Tagalog-speaking friends did not share that experience. As I heard their broken English slowly resemble my own speech, as I watched them help their parents translate government documents at the age of 9, I realized the importance of learning English and ESL programs. In my senior project class, I was given the opportunity to research a topic of choice. I chose ESL. It was there where I investigated the flaws of ESL programs across the country, but also recognized the program's essentiality. As EL's English language learners suffer from academic underachievement and societal obstacles, the importance of learning English should be transparent, yet that does not seem to be the case. In her post on Facebook, Ms. Manning stated that continuing to educate South Americans is unsustainable, referencing the 300 additional ESL students in the past year. I am aware of the program's $1 million increase in the past 2 years. In the same way, I'm aware that ESL services make up 0.19% of the 2021-2022 fiscal budget. To her, I ask, if the current path is unsustainable, then what is the alternative? Schools turning away students who need ESL services, students isolated during instruction with translated packets of information in front of them, students absent from class discussions, losing even more opportunities to improve their conversational capabilities, students left unprepared for the future. The design of ESL is supposed to be temporary. Students are supposed to gradually improve, eventually reaching a level where they can speak in the way how I am speaking to you. This perceived unsustainability originates from the fact that students are stuck with these labels, students aren't improving, and students aren't able to graduate from these programs. I understand that hiring ESL teachers is no easy task. However, the answer lies in what is already existing. Every teacher of every subject is an English teacher, whether they realize it or not. Many teachers across the district do not know how to interact with these students and do not know how they can contribute to their English learning. The language learning process thrives off of discussion and conversation.
30 seconds.
Thus, when a class consists of lectures and classwork, ELLs not only miss out on conversing with their peers, but become heavily reliant on their ESL teachers, which again, the district is finding trouble finding. As our student population grows, the accommodating services need to grow and adapt with it. I leave all of the school board members with one message. Students are entitled to learning the instructional language, and any limit to that is embarrassing to a district that prides itself on diversity
And that is
equity.
time. Our next speaker is Lucia Morton, then Kalisa Blunt, and then Krista Johnson.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I want to commend every speaker here today for demonstrating their concerns for a community of students who often struggle to do so on their own. Students who qualify for English as second language services are clearly defined by their limited fluency in English. These students struggle to communicate their needs, opinions, and concerns in the classroom. But this has nothing to do with their potential or their competence. The first time I was familiarized with the ESL program was during my freshman year, during my Spanish 4 course. Some of my friends were native Spanish speakers, Spanish being their first language, who often applied themselves to help teach our students Spanish curriculum. As child of a Panamanian immigrant, one who grew up with programs throughout grade school that guided her towards English proficiency, I learned firsthand the value of biliteracy. Yo conozco la importancia de hablando en el idioma de mi familia, as well as the language of my neighbors and peers. Our current public educational model does not emphasize bilingual education. I see this as a major loss for Virginia Beach students who grow up without the opportunity to learn from other cultures firsthand or pass to them from their family. I am in disbelief that an adult, an employee of the city, feels entitled to criticize students who are taking up this task on their own. I am in disbelief that an adult, an employee of the city, can be so ignorant to her constituents. She stated that her political opponents twisted her words into something that she absolutely did not intend, but her choice of words speaks volumes on her priorities behind the scenes. From my opinion, the children of immigrant taxpayers are just as deserving of an equal education than those of non-immigrant taxpayers. Dismissing these concerns breeds the notion that students in this system are not equal, not deserving of equal respect. I speak today to call for a celebration of these students, not critique. I want to celebrate them for their commitment to furthering their education and operating in an environment that doesn't always serve them or offer the right resources they need to overcome their educational and social obstacles. I want to celebrate these students for braving new environments and sharing their unique perspective with our community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kalisa Blunt, then Krista Johnson, then Benjamin Batawan.
Welcome.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Kalisa, and I am a senior at the Entrepreneurship and Business Academy. I am here tonight to speak on the appalling comments made by a school board member on cutting ESL funding. It was recently said that continuing to educate South Americans is not sustainable due to the influx of Central American students. They claim to advocate for the stability of all students despite blatantly ostracizing a minority group. Once any student enters the VPCPS school system, they are a VPCPS student and should be treated with the same respect and care as any other student in the district. And there are no exceptions to this. The mission and vision statement of the district reference maximizing student potential and empowering students to become a responsible, lifelong learner who engages with the global community, but how is that possible without the necessary resources? Our core values include putting students first and valuing differences, but the targeting of a specific group of students and then advocating against the provision of resources is simply cultural intolerance, neglect, and bigotry. These comments coming from a position of power only tell students that they are not cared for by educational authorities, and that gets us nowhere in terms of progress. It only fosters distrust for the system. It is a responsibility of the educators, the state, and the school boards to ensure that their students are in a safe and welcoming environment. In what capacity is a school welcoming when you cannot communicate with your peers or teachers? Cutting funding would only create a larger learning gap between ESL students and those who have English as their native language. And what could possibly be more important than educating your students? Students that serve as translators at home, students that will become leaders, students that are the future, and there is nothing unstable about investing in a future. I ask that going forward in the evaluation of the ESL programs, the school board does not propose a resolution to cut funding, but instead look for alternative ways to meet these students' needs and more, because they are every bit deserving of it. Every student in this district has the undeniable right to free public education under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and if you truthfully cared for every student's stability, that would include ESL students. The question should not be to cut funding, but how do we work with these families to ensure that their child's needs are adequately met? I also ask that in the coming time, the school board reflects on their meaning of diversity and inclusion and how to reach it. There's talk about more initiative and reassurance from the school board members, even
30
school
seconds.
faculties, that they care, but your actions speak louder than words. Time and time again, I have seen continuous steps backwards from the comments made about ESL students today to past resolutions. Our motto is ahead of the curve, which is ironic at best. There are many other students speaking here besides me on similar topics, and that should be more than enough to realize that we need more change and to respond to our calls to action, starting with the continued support of your ESL students. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Krista Johnson, then Benjamin Batuan.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Continuing to educate South Americans is not sustainable. When I first read those words, I was astonished. When I first showed my fellow students those words, they were astonished. An elected official can believe whatever they want in this free country, no matter how strongly I may disagree with such a mindset. But what they cannot do is dishonor their oath to serve all students, whether a student crossed the border legally, illegally, or they are a first-generation student. That does not matter because they are students of Virginia Beach over everything else. Every teacher that I know lives by that ideology. And if we didn't, we would be living in the Jim Crow South. Anybody who looks at a student and sees them as a burden because of their nationality should never be trusted to serve and represent those students, or students of any type for that matter. I am not Hispanic, but I am a senior at Bayside High School, and I don't feel comfortable being represented by someone who would allow those words to come out of their mind and into a Facebook post. I don't feel comfortable being served by someone who feels the need to verbally single out and belittle the students whom they are supposed to serve. For example, if I said it's not sustainable to continue servicing South American people at the restaurant I work at, I would be fired. And I believe that this is the correct course of action. Failing to reprimand such words would be a failure to all students of this school system. I would like for this to be the takeaway of my speech. Inaction is no less a disservice than the wrongdoing itself. I stand with our ESL students of all nationalities, and so should everyone who claims to serve this school system. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Benjamin Batuan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I start, though it is only my second time here, it is an honor to stand here and to address the remarkable women that stand before me, especially on Women's History Month. So let me be the first to say that I am suffocating by all the power that occupies this room. In a good way, of course. Anyway, let me relieve you from my banal remarks of flattery, and let me turn to my primary focus of tonight's meeting. I've been carefully analyzing this statement previously made by board member Ms. Manning, specifically stating that continuing to educate South Americans is not sustainable. Let me refute firstly by saying that while Ms. Manning may argue that the education of ESL students in our district may not be the most sustainable practice, to everyone listening tonight, and listen carefully when I say this, we simply cannot deny that there are still a vast number of students and families whose lives become susceptible to opinions like these. According to Ms. Manning herself, this thread concerns at least 300 ESL students and their families. To be frank, I found this sentiment a little hard to digest, and I'm sure you can imagine that this was just as inconceivable for several others. For me, though, I found this particularly difficult to hear because of something that I've been hyper aware of for some time. VBCPS staff are required to make the same distinct commitment every day, which follows as this. Confounded in every email sent by an employee of Virginia Beach Public Schools, at the very end of them is the signature that denotes a very profound list of mission statements for our institution. And when I begin to look at them, the most significant expressions that stand out to me are those that profess to seek growth, value differences, and to put students first. From my understanding into various faculty and peer interpretation, all of these spiral down to the idea that our schools strive to prioritize the development of all and any students for their benefit. So I'm sorry to say, Ms. Manning, that the statements made previously about the educational welfare of ESL students are hypocritical and definitely deeply contradictory to what I feel Virginia Beach stands for. I know that it has to sting for some that personnel as high as the school board are choosing to backtrack from what should be their core beliefs. And while I can't speak from personal experience, I know that others wouldn't appreciate that their school officials would be casting down faces of dismay and disappointment because they couldn't produce a desirable result for them. I may be oversimplifying, but I can give you this. So you may sit each
30
other
seconds.
down and commit to the idea that providing for ESL students a better quality education, of which they wouldn't receive in their original circumstance otherwise, is not realistic. But I hope that when you are sifting through your thoughts in a tinted window of reflection, that you are satisfied with what comes next for a disadvantaged group of people, especially those of whom continue to adorn your community. I'm asking you today to please not turn your backs on students who rely on the English as a second language program when moving towards your evaluation of it tonight. Thank you.
And that is time. Madam Chair, that was our last in-student speaker, so we will move on to our next speakers, Amanda Yarborough, Randy Porter, and Joyce Francesi.
Good evening.
Good evening. I want to start off, those students that just spoke are what makes us teachers so proud to be teachers of Virginia Beach Public Schools. As an ESL teacher in Virginia Beach, I only have a single point to make tonight. I am certain that the board, along with the entire staff of the school system, is of the mind that all our students, being both citizens of the future and of the city, are worthy of our time, our resources, and care. I trust that a budget will be passed that reflects this. Please support a budget that puts educating our children first, students first. I do, however, believe it is important to think about the words we use when we debate such topics. To specifically isolate a group of students by their ethnicity and use them as an example in a way that suggests inferiority or that they are unworthy burden on our school system is not only wrong, but hurtful. I ask you to act more carefully about the way you debate or raise issues, and do so in a way that illustrates your concerns without alienating our ESL families. They are not political pawns. They are future doctors, lawyers, writers, scientists, teachers. But today, they are children. And to use them as fodder for political gain by making them feel unworthy because of the difference in the languages they speak in the countries from which they come in is an incredibly poor taste and damaging. If any of our students are watching tonight, I love you. We all love you. The ESL department right here. You are worthy. You amaze me every day. And teaching you is the most important thing to sustain. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Randy Porter, then Joyce Francesi, and then Susan Saltesiak.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Randy Porter, and I'm proud to be an ESL teacher. I was born in the United States. My skin is white. My first language is English. These are privileges that I do not take lightly. On the contrary, most of my students were born in another country or are first-generation Americans. Their skin is brown. Their first language is Spanish. These are things they should not be penalized for, especially when they are Virginia Beach students. And our mission states that we are to work together to empower every student. English language learners, regardless of where they're from, are deserving of the best possible education that we can provide them. The way you vote tonight on the proposed ESL budget will show how committed you are to our students and whether or not you will choose to uphold our values. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Joyce Francesi, Susan Saltesiak, and then Rachel Thompson.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Franzese, and I have had the honor of being an ESL teacher for the past 15 years, with the last 10 here in BBCPS. I am also the wife of an English language learner. I am here this evening to speak about the reprehensible post made on Facebook by one of our own school board members. When I was made aware of this post that morning, I immediately went through a range of emotions. The first thing I felt, of course, was anger. How could anyone, let alone a member of our own school board, have the audacity to tell a group of children that their education just isn't worth it? Next, I started to feel a deep sadness. I felt the sadness because words matter. My sadness was for any student that had to wake up that day and see those words. Sad that they had to realize that someone actually thinks that they are not worth educating. I felt this sadness for the parents who read those words and had to see that one of our own school board members believes that their child is a burden on our school division. I was also sad as I thought about my own husband. He entered his kindergarten classroom in 1973 speaking no English. What if his teacher had asked where his parents came from and used that to decide whether he was worth educating or not? Where would he be today if that had happened? After those feelings, I went full circle and returned to the anger that I still feel today. I am angry because you came after my students. How dare you quantify our children to decide who is worth educating and who is not? What makes you think it is okay to decide which cultural backgrounds deserve to learn English and yet others do not? You seem to forget that this is a public school system. Every child deserves to be here. Our ESL students are such a gift, and it brings me joy to see all they accomplish and all they can do because of their multilingual abilities. Before you try to continue backpedaling your way out of the intentions of your post by claiming it was only a budgetary concern, let me ask you this. Why did you fail to post about the increase of over 300 Pell students that we also had this year as being unsustainable? Are they worth educating? Or are you okay with that because you assume they were all born in the United States? What about the large number of NATO students we serve in the ESL program? Are they okay to educate, or will that depend on their country of origin as well? You were elected to serve all of the families and students in the city of Virginia Beach. You serve on the board of the Virginia Beach City Public Schools.
30 seconds.
You don't get to pick and choose which students to enroll. That is the beauty and the confidence of our public school system, that we are here to love and educate all of the children in our community. My students deserve school board members that believe in them, all of them.
Our next speaker is Suzanne Saltesiak, Rachel Thompson, and then Susan Hippen.
Wow, 70 speakers tonight. I am so very glad that so many in our community are showing up today to show our ESL students, our ESL families, that they are not only welcome here, but that they sustain us. Their resilience and effort to not only learn a second language, but to learn in another language is so beyond admirable that I cannot imagine the strength of character it takes to do that. And also to show these members of our community that their work, their effort, sustains us. And some of these students may be our ESL teachers of tomorrow or our very own school board members. So I came today to make sure that they know. Todos son bienvenidos aquí. And while I'd love to talk about making intolerant Facebook posts that are not available for all of the public to view or comment, and when called on them saying that it's about funding, which is in direct contrast to last summer forcing the school district to spend $18,000 to win a lawsuit said to be about public access. Instead, I'm going to choose to amplify the words from the Mexican consulate. Dear Dr. Spence, first of all, I would like to thank you for all of the Virginia Beach City Public Schools educational services to the Mexican community. Hundreds of families continuously benefit from the quality education programs and other assistance that allows them to have better integration and contributions to the communities in which they live. With their work, Mexicans contribute significantly to the great Commonwealth of Virginia.
In 2021, the trade between Mexico and Virginia was worth $3.2 billion and supported 135,000 jobs in the latter. Virginia is home to countless families of Mexican origin, and Virginia Beach is one of 3 main regions in which they reside. The relationship between Mexico and Virginia is strong due to the ever-growing commercial and cultural exchange promoted both from our people, our Virginian institutions, NGOs, and organizations such as the Virginia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Bilingualism plays a pivotal role in success, not only because of the language skills, but also due to the cognitive and neurological benefits it has in a person from birth and into adulthood. English as a second language, language immersion, and other diversity programs are essential to strengthen the future of young generations. Here at the Embassy of Mexico, we continuously hear success stories of young Americans of Mexican origin and young Mexicans who are
30
raised
seconds.
in a Spanish-speaking family in Virginia that studied at public schools and who have either a successful professional career or a path toward pursuing an undergraduate or graduate degree. These achievements reflect the importance of their education and the commitment of their teachers, directors, and public school system personnel. I take this opportunity to share with you that my office has a Spanish textbook donation each year to provide schools with books in Spanish for elementary education. As well, the Embassy of Mexico created the following website.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rachel Thompson, then Susan Hippen, then Cheryl Turpin.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Thompson. I've worked for Virginia Beach Schools for over 18 years. First as a language teacher and currently as a family outreach representative in the Office of Family and Community Engagement. I work daily with ESL and dual language immersion teachers, students, and their families. The educators I work with see our English language learner bilingualism as an asset and not a deficit. We celebrate the many languages and cultures represented in our schools. In the FACE office, this has been a major focus of our work over the past year, including the creation of the Language Ambassador Program, the hiring of 12 ESL Family School Liaisons through a Title III grant, listening to the experiences of our Spanish-speaking families in monthly Hispanic Voice family group meetings, and more. All of this work aligns with Goal 5 of the Compass to 2025 strategic framework, strengthening relationships with our families and assuring them that they are welcome in our schools. So you will understand that I am disappointed, frustrated, and angry that one of our own school board members so casually and cruelly undermined these efforts with a factually inaccurate, bad faith social media post, scapegoating the South American community and by default, the larger Spanish-speaking Latino community in Virginia Beach, and insinuating that our ESL program is not sustainable. How can I assure our families that Virginia Beach is an inclusive and welcoming community when those who purportedly represent our schools disparage them openly? I refuse to accept the explanation that this is a simple fiscal concern. The $1 million increase in the ESL spending simply does not represent a significant enough portion of the school division's budget of over $1 billion to warrant this kind of exposure and attention. Virginia Beach Schools' mission states, the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, in partnership with the entire community, will empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. We cannot accept intolerance and xenophobia in our public schools. Immigrants are essential to our culture, economy, and our history. This land is no more Ms. Manning's than it is theirs. Our schools are here to uplift and serve all families and educate them regardless of their race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexuality, economic status, or religion. All are welcome here.
30 seconds.
I stand with all of our families and defend their right to a quality education, which includes an excellent ESL instruction. I stand with all of our families and believe they deserve a school board that values their dignity as part of our community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Susan Hippen, then Cheryl Turpin, and then Kim Bentley.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Susan Hippen. I'm a retired Navy Master Chief. I am a Gold Star widow, and I am the auntie of 3 Virginia Beach students. This statement is why we're all here tonight, okay? This is why. I want you to know that this was not a global statement. one of your friends, ma'am, dined you out. That statement was put on Facebook on February 25th. On February 28th, Governor Youngkin removed you from an education commission. I want you to know that I believe your statement was hurtful and reeked of bigotry. I've come here to speak before on the diversity policy, the teaching of all history, which, thank you for quoting me that you believe in teaching on history. I heard about that. And tonight, the belittling of ESL students from South America. I wonder if you would have made that same statement had those ESL students been from Germany or Finland or España. That video that one of your statements said was garbled, no ma'am, it was not. I understood every word that that woman said. I watched the video. You have stated that you are of Irish and Native American descent. We might be related because so am I. I'm also of Pennsylvania Dutch descent and Bermudan descent. My mother, who by the way looked more like you than me, spoke Low German as a child. Yo viví en España por 4 años, en la base del naval de Rota. I was stationed in Rota, Spain for 4 years. My nephew is in his 3rd year of Japanese at Tallwood High School. I have one more question. Marunong ng Tagalog? I did a Westpac, and I picked up quite a bit of Tagalog. Konti lang pero, konti lang, okay? I want to restate one important thing. Your statement was hurtful. I don't know what your feelings are. I can't say that. And it's not for me to say how you felt. My concern is that
30
you have not
seconds.
apologized or stated one iota of remorse or compassion for those you have hurt. It wasn't about the budget, ma'am. I'm sorry. It was about little brown children in Virginia Beach. If you need help understanding, I will help you with that. Several of the board members here have my personal phone number, and I invite you to contact me. Please, no more.
And our next speaker is Cheryl Turpin, Kim Bentley, and then Kathleen Cahoon Newchuck.
Good evening.
Good evening. I first of all want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to be able to speak before you. I am a veteran teacher of more than 20 years here in the city of Virginia Beach. And simply stated, over the years, populations of students change. Sometimes we got a whole bunch of boys in the classes. Sometimes we get a whole bunch of girls in the classes. Sometimes we have a bunch of students that have special needs and require a little bit more assistance. We have many, many more students that are autistic. We have more students that are English language learners. 1 out of 5 of my students at home speak a language other than English. 1 in 5. I teach 150 students environmental science. Every day I teach my children the very best I can. Every day I teach my students, when you can be anything, be kind. Miss Manning, please be kind. And if you can't be kind, then just don't speak out. And I have taught that to my students year after year for more than 28 years as an educator. So please be kind. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kim Bentley, then Kathleen Cahoon Newchuck, and then Casey Conger.
Good evening.
Good evening. Quote, VB Schools has 300 additional ESL students in the past year. Most are from South America. Our ESL budget has increased over $1 million in 2 years. Continuing to educate South Americans is not sustainable, unquote. Boy, doesn't it take an English teacher to diagram that statement to show your concerns weren't budgetary, or that maybe for some strange reason you just favor El Salvadorians over Chileans. Did you voice that same objection when you voted on spending $1 million for the lacrosse program? Of course not. It always seems odd to me that people so against immigrants are suddenly so proud of what type of immigrant they are come St. Patrick's Day or Oktoberfest, or in describing how their ancestors came to this country the right way. Fun fact, before 1875, there were no immigration restrictions in the U.S., so the right way was just stepping off the boat. Que difficile. At a time when our school leaders should be raising the quality of education and raising the standards of academic achievement, you, Ms. Manning, have once again lowered the standards of basic human decency. Nobody deserves to have their kids described as a burden on the system. Nobody deserves to have their kids dehumanized. Whether you're a parent scrubbing toilets or scrubbing in for surgery, every working class citizen in the city should be able to trust their kids are being left in the care of leaders that see them as fellow humans and see them for the potential of what they can become. You whine and complain about how just learning about racism makes you and your kids feel uncomfortable. Imagine how exhausting it feels to live it, to be on the receiving end of it. You bellyache about how racism was in the past and our kids shouldn't have to learn it. It generally helps if you stop doing the racism first. You treat racism as if it's this immutable force like weather or gravity, when it's solely in your power to stop saying and doing the bigoted things. If you don't want to hear about racism, then stop doing the racism. Last thing, before you go running off the Fox and Friends about how you're being attacked for your rights or your First Amendment is being infringed or whatever, the First Amendment protects you against legal consequences from speaking out against the state. What it doesn't do is protect you from the social consequences of your actions, which is what you're experiencing now. You would generally learn that in an 8th grade civics textbook, or did you already burn that one as well?
Our next speaker is Kathleen Cahoon-Newchuk, then Casey Conger, then Wendy Sue Clausen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. My name is Kathleen Cahoon-Newchuk, and I'm the coordinator of the English as a Second Language program for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. I'm joined this evening by my instructional specialist, Shannon Leonard, as well as many of our awesome ESL teachers. Shannon and I feel fortunate and honored to lead and serve the wonderful ESL team in Virginia Beach. In 1978, the U.S. Supreme Court case of Castaneda versus Picard held that English language acquisition programs are required to be based on sound educational theory, effectively implemented with sufficient resources, and evaluated and proven to be effective. I want to stress that second criterion again. Our program must be effectively implemented with sufficient resources. In 1982, the U.S. Supreme Court case of Plyler versus Doe held that under the 14th Amendment, it is unconstitutional to deny education to students living in the United States, regardless of the immigration status of the student or parent. Virginia Beach Schools currently provides ESL services to 2,091 English learners, but what you may not realize is that we have English learners from 97 countries, only 5 of which are Central American countries. While Spanish is the most frequently spoken language, our English learner population represents more than 80 different languages. These students and their families contribute to a diverse and vibrant multicultural community in Virginia Beach. Less than 1% of the total budget for Virginia Beach schools is for ESL. However, the ESL population makes up about 3% of the total student population. The ESL budget has increased over the last 2 years, mainly due to increased English learner enrollment and a decrease in the student-teacher ratio for English learners, which is a state standards of quality or SOQ requirement. These factors resulted in the addition of 12 ESL teachers beginning with the 2021 school year. These 12 additional teachers have allowed VB schools to continue to meet the SOQ, which for the 21-22 school year is 20 teachers per 1,000 English learners. This equals a caseload of 50 English learners per ESL teacher. The average caseload for a Virginia Beach ESL teacher is 47 students. However, during yesterday's federal program audit with a representative from the Virginia Department of Education, we were asked to address teacher caseloads that exceed the SOQ of 50 English learners. Currently, as we have English learners in every elementary, middle, and high school, 17 of our 43 ESL teachers have a caseload larger than 50. Our current team of ESL teachers are spread across this large school district, with all but 10 ESL
30
teachers
seconds.
having more than one school. For example, an elementary teacher with 3 schools has 3 administrative teams, 18 grade levels, and can potentially have anywhere from 20 to 30 classroom teachers with whom they must communicate regularly. The addition of 8 ESL teacher allocations is necessary for our students, for our families, for our ESL teachers, and for BB schools to remain compliant with state guidelines. In closing, I'd like to remind everyone that we have to make ESL sustainable because it's both a federal requirement and an ethic responsibility. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Casey Conger, Wendy Sue Clausen, and Heidi Dragnet.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. I am Casey Conger, mom to 2 Virginia Beach students, wife to a Virginia Beach teacher, graduate of VB Schools, and currently the proud principal of Cook Elementary. I mean it when I say I am all in when it comes to the success of Virginia Beach schools. In this age of cancel culture and passionate opinions on every matter coming from multiple sides, we have to drown out the noise and choose where we want to put our focus, energy, and voice. I know that speaking before you could place me in a difficult position. However, at some point, silence is acceptance, and there are times that a leader must use their voice to protect and elevate those who have entrusted them to this position. Our mission at Cook is aligned to our division and simple: love them, teach them, believe in them. And we mean all of them. Our diverse population is evident when you walk through our doors, but it only tells one part of the Cook story. At Cook, we have developed a school culture and climate where everyone is valued and given what they need to be successful, and that looks different for every kid and every family. In a recent social media post, one small community of learners was singled out, and the increase of this population said to be unsustainable. We have had to address other increases in our schools as we continue to navigate a pandemic. I have seen our students with food and housing insecurities increase, our students who need mental health support increase, our special ed population increase, but none of them are unsustainable. It makes those of us doing the work more committed than ever. Our English learners come from all over the world, some NATO, some supporting our military, some who have sacrificed and experienced things that we cannot even begin to understand, but all have one goal: to give their children an education and a better life. I am here to ensure that my school and community know that we are more committed than ever, and nothing will derail us from our mission of every student every day. Providing support for one does not take away the support from another. A rising tide lifts all boats. I would like to leave you with a few words from one of our students, Raul, who arrived at Cook speaking very little English, but shows an unparalleled determination every day to learn and grow. In November, Raul wrote, "Sometimes things can get complicated, but nothing is hard with motivation. I am thankful for my family, my teachers, my classmates, and my friends. Even though we went through a lot of things, we are strong. I am thankful for all the support. No matter what, I will keep going. Cook has always been where I belong. It makes me feel great and valuable. You make such a difference for me. Sincerely and happy Thanksgiving, Raul." This is how I hope
30
every
seconds.
child and adult feels as they walk into every school in Virginia Beach. It is the very most sustainable aspect of who we are. Teachers and staff do not leave this work because the support needed for all students. This is not what causes staffing shortages. They leave when they feel those who should have their back further deter them from their mission and goals. Para mi comunidad latina, te valoramos y estamos contigo.
Our next speaker is Wendy Sue Clausen, then Heidi Dragnet, then Beatrice Amberman.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Spence, and community members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I am a 20-year veteran teacher, the past 8 of those years being here in Virginia Beach as an ESL teacher. I am the ESL teacher at Cook Elementary. What brings me here tonight is the hurt I felt when I saw a recent Facebook comment posted by one of our very own board members. This comment stated it was unsustainable to continue to educate South American students. Well, after dedicating my entire career to educating multilingual learners from all over the world, this comment struck a very sensitive chord for me. Teaching is not just my job, it is my calling. All my students are strong, resilient, motivated, intelligent, beautiful, and amazing. I will continue to defend, advocate, teach. Pardon me, I lost my place. I will continue to defend, advocate, teach, love, and encourage all my students and families as long as I am able. They deserve the very best, regardless of where they come from. I invite any of you to come to my classroom at any time to see the work that is being done each and every day. You will be amazed not only with my students, but with the family environment we have at Cook Elementary, and we do take great pride at Casa de Cook. This situation also affected me on a personal level. My grandfather came to this country just with the clothes on his back. He wanted a better life. Through hard work, determination, and perseverance, he became bilingual, biliterate, built his own company, and he maintained dual citizenship his whole life between the United States and the Dominican Republic. My grandfather instilled many of life lessons in me, including the value of education, respect for culture, to appreciate bilingualism, and never, never to give up. What if his teachers thought that educating him was unsustainable? Then my family would never have started, and I would not be here.
30 seconds.
He is the reason I learned Spanish and why I set my life's mission to educating multilingual learners. I leave you with this thought. Te damos la bienvenida aquí. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Heidi Dragnev, then Beatrice Amberman. Heidi Dragnev. Okay. Beatrice Amberman.
Good evening.
Good evening, honorable members of Virginia Beach School Board. I'm Beatrice Amberman, and I am a proud person living here in the city of Virginia Beach, and I call this my home. I speak before you today as chair of the Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations, and we are here to demand respect for our immigrant students and to support the requested budget increase for 8 additional full-time ESL teaching positions. It is our view that investing resources in our students' needs, whether it is math, reading and writing, or English as a second language instruction, is a smart investment in the future taxpayers of our city. We must remember that under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, every child in America has a constitutional right to free public education. We also denounce the harmful and offensive remarks of school board member Victoria Manning and reject the notion that she is the victim of attacks. The community is speaking out because of her attacks on students is repulsive. Mrs. Manning is the one that has stained her own reputation with her written statement. And because of that, she has managed by implication to hurt her colleagues at the school board and the good character of our great and inclusive city. We see the wisdom of the governor in distancing his administration from a divisive elected leader, and we hope the voters in our city do the same. Please remember, just because a person is speaking another language doesn't mean they don't belong in this country. Our students are taking ESL classes and are bilingual citizens of this country, and they will use those skills to serve our nation. We don't need apologies from a person that obviously doesn't know how to serve her diverse constituents. We want the assurance that the school board will continue to respect and value all Virginia Beach Public School students.
30 seconds.
We ask for your commitment to provide them with the financial resources and tools they will need to succeed in life, which in turn makes Virginia Beach and our country more prosperous. Thank you.
Speaker 14 did not check in, so we will go to Melissa Luxon, then Bonnie Cartwright, and Crystal Felton. Melissa Luxon.
Go on, Madam Clerk.
Bonnie Cartwright, Crystal Felton, and then Amber Thompson.
Good evening.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. My name is Bonnie Cartwright, and I am the only ESL teacher at Princess Anne High School, where I currently have a caseload of 49 students who come from Central and South America, as well as Asia, Europe, Africa, and India. I teach 5 blocks at PA and then leave and travel to Bayside High School to teach 1 block there to assist my colleague who is the sole ESL teacher with a caseload of way over 50 students. I had thought about detailing to you all of the tasks I did in one sample day, but then decided that would not be the right message because I love my job. And I am not complaining about the things I get to do. Instead, I would like to detail for you just some of the things that I could not do on that same day because there is only one of me, and it is humanly impossible for me to do everything that needs to be done on a daily basis. If there were 2 or even 1.5 ESL teachers at my school, here are some of the additional things I could have accomplished. I could have sat with and helped a young man work through the Apex Online English course that he is taking in a frantic attempt to graduate before he ages out of the system. I could have followed a girl into her biology class to help her take notes and follow along with the lecture. I could have met with the English teacher who is really trying to accommodate the ELs in her class but doesn't know how, because we have completely opposite schedules and can never plan together. I could have met with the other teacher who is not trying to accommodate the ELs in his class so that I could see what I may be able to do to help and encourage him. If Bayside had adequate ESL staffing so that I did not have to leave PA early, I could have held the dedicated ESL study block I had planned to have this year, in which I could directly assist the handful of my students who are failing multiple core classes and need my one-on-one assistance. Because we high school teachers are only allotted the pre-service week in which to get all of our many administrative tasks done at the beginning of the school year, we cannot
30
adequately
seconds.
prepare for our year. If our position were to be expanded to a 10-month extended contract, we would be able to meet with the counselors to make sure each of our students is scheduled into their classes that would best suit their needs, plan with the teachers, screen our new students, and write and distribute the LIEP plans before the first day of school. So I am asking that the budget that was proposed be accepted as is to meet the needs.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Crystal Felton, then Amber Thompson, then Lindsay Bohan.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Spence, school board members. I am a reading specialist in Virginia Beach. A few weeks ago, our school just wrapped up Black History Month to help educate students about the numerous contributions that African Americans have made in American history. This month-long celebration was important to our building because it honors and teaches students about all periods of U.S. history. It is celebrated to ensure our African American students feel a strong sense of belonging and pride within our school. The same feeling we want our ESL population to feel when they walk through the doors of any Virginia Beach school. After reading one school board member's Facebook post about our ESL population of students, I was shocked, but not surprised. The post was hurtful, racist, and detrimental to the work we do as educators. The sky should be the limit when we are preparing our future leaders who will one day take care of you and me. Adding additional positions for ESL teachers is sustainable because they have a direct impact on the lives and future lives of their students. What's not sustainable is targeting certain minority groups, banning books, and posting false information about what is being taught in our schools. That's not sustainable. In fact, it's unproductive. It gets in the way of the real work we should be focusing on. As a literacy leader, I love what I do. It gives me hope for the future. It offers me an opportunity to grow as a human and discover the good in all children, no matter their race, gender, religion, address, or immigration status. However, when I am unable to find the good in certain children, that's when I know I need to push pause and reflect upon my why. This work is too freaking important to harvest any kind of negative attitude towards any group of children. So in closing, I would like to share a few reflective questions that I use to help me
30 seconds.
remember my why. Do I keep all students at the center of my work? Am I open-minded and non-judgmental? Do I provide a safe, warm, caring, and non-threatening atmosphere for all students? Do I stay on topic, or do I create distractions? Do I have a positive, negative attitude that can impact my work with students? If you are unsure about any of these questions, then it might be time for you to push pause.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amber Thompson, Lindsay Bohan, and then Christopher Vieira.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm actually here to thank Vicki Manning for all of the hard work that she's put forth for our children, especially over the last 2 years. The picture being painted about you tonight is not true, and we all know that. Tonight, we've heard from many speakers who have been recruited to come attack one of these women up here for simply stating facts. I honestly can't believe some of you board members enjoy sitting through these long meetings, going tit for tat rather than working together on real issues, but here we are yet again. I can sit here and defend Vicki all day, but I don't think it's necessary, because everyone in this room knows the true intent behind her words. Instead, you all were foaming at the mouth, looking for a reason to pounce on here, and there it was. You know full and well this trajectory is unsustainable. Where will we get the money from? Not one of you has provided a solution, except for the students, actually. They did a great job tonight. Rather, jumped on your social medias to condemn her and rally the troops. Did any of you sitting up there let your followers know about Senate Bill 156 and how it was struck down due to budgetary restraints? I bet not. This bill was also centered around the ESL program, which is the point Vicki was trying to make. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. However, it all makes sense now. Kim, I know you have some tough competition as you run for re-election, so is this why you believe this shouldn't be let go and instead used to take down one of your fellow members? Is that why you all have recruited children and other groups to show up here tonight and fight this battle for you? We know based on the standard you set forth in the governance committee that you all cannot speak out on matters that were made on private social media. So is that the reason for this campaign? You all blasted this out to every news station hoping to cancel her because you know she is right. You brought all the negative attention to our city and got people up in arms for merely nothing more than a logistical statement. The budgetary concerns are a fact. This current trajectory is not sustainable. Hence, her comments regarding such. So my question to you is, do you even know what you're fighting for? You call her a racist, a bigot, whatever the other trigger words are that you guys use nowadays, yet half the people I've spoken to have no idea what the real argument is. You all are making this fallacious attack on her simply taking your marching orders from people that only want to use this and you guys for a political gain. This is no more than a blatant retaliation and clearly against policy, but we all know that rules and standards on this board only apply to individuals who think differently than the board majority. The way you all have spoken about unmasked children for months is far worse than a budgetary concern that was brought up by Vicki. Nothing derogatory was said, no matter how many of you try to force it down our throats tonight.
30 seconds.
This will all blow over and be another waste of time. Vicki has been fighting for all students over the years, and I'm hopeful that one day we'll have a complete board who will put our students first rather than their political motives. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lindsay Bohan, Christopher Vieira, and then Danielle Ovio.
Good evening.
Good evening. In advance, I want to apologize if my message doesn't align with how things are done in Virginia Beach. Unfortunately, the VBCPS website and district personnel have not been very transparent about how the ESL program is set up in Virginia Beach. This includes speaker number 9, a VBCPS employee who didn't call me back and also refused to talk to me tonight during our 90-minute break. So I'm piecing things together on my own. I taught special education for 7 years in another state. We had many English language learners where I taught, but we were very fortunate because in our district, we addressed the need by the school board voted to allow funding for teachers to receive their ESL endorsements. So they partnered with a local well-known university to offer the ESL endorsement to all teachers, general ed, special ed, whoever wanted it. Every Tuesday night for several months after working a full day, I attended a 3-hour-long class with my colleagues from all over the district, and ultimately we all completed our coursework to receive our ESL endorsement. Our school district paid for these classes. We received college credit, which counted toward lane changes, which is pay raises, and those credits also counted toward our master's equivalency if we were working towards that. Aside from those financial incentives, it was truly one of the best trainings and endorsements I ever received, and I received many. You see, I hesitated receiving my ESL endorsement because I misunderstood what ESL endorsement meant. And like the young man stated earlier, regardless of what subject we teach, we are all English teachers. What I gained from my coursework made me a better teacher in so many ways. $1 million is a lot of money, and it's needed for sure. I think we all agree on that. We were all in agreement. We need this program, okay? We all agree with that. So, but we need to come up with some solutions. So, in my research, I learned that the requirements to receive an ESL endorsement, and this is what I was asking the district people, is outlined in Title 8 of the Virginia Code. I also learned that there are at least 18 universities, and I have a list, that offers ESL endorsements for already licensed teachers. So, just go with me. George Mason University is on that list. George Mason University's tuition rate is approximately $542 per credit. That's a lot. Following the Virginia Code and
30 seconds.
the Virginia Department of Education's requirement of 24 course credits to receive the endorsement, receiving the endorsement would cost approximately $13,000. At that tuition rate, which I admit is very high, so we can find it cheaper, I'm sure, with that $1 million, we could fund 76 ESL teachers to receive their full ESL endorsement. I just wish that we could consider outside of the box thinking. Is ESL endorsements for teachers a possibility? How can we spend that
And that
money?
is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christopher Vieira, then Daniela Olivo, and then Elizabeth Heischrober.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I felt compelled to come speak today due to the xenophobic and racist comments made by Miss Victoria Manning, especially about the English as a second language program and the group of students she singled out. The ESL program is incredibly beneficial and important. I'm the son of an immigrant, and his family, when they came to America, took ESL classes. They were of huge benefit to help them comprehend the English language and just overall get used to the American culture. The figure that you stated as unsustainable is but a fraction of the total budget, so I don't see how that's even possible. On top of that, this brings innumerable benefits to its students, much more than how much we're spending on it. Excuse me. Also, in your official post saying kind of what you meant by your post, you stated that you were more concerned about teachers and the teacher shortage, yet you neglected to mention that at all in your actual Facebook post. How is that possible? On top of that, you also said that you misheard South versus Central America. I struggle to see how that even matters. Singling out where these students are from doesn't change how vitriolic that comment was. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, I lost my place. Oh, excuse me. Your insistence on singling out where these students are from seems nothing more than a veiled attempt to otherize them and in turn deem them less worthy of our funding. That sentiment couldn't be farther from the truth. I would challenge you to focus on, as this body likes to say, charting a path forward for these students, not putting up roadblocks against them. The final thing I would like to do is challenge this whole body, but especially you since you made the comment, to go out, meet people, and have experiences that challenge the dogma of your worldviews. I hope that you do this, because without that, our children will not succeed. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Danielle Olivo, Elizabeth Heischrober, and then Teresa Stanley.
Welcome.
I know a lot of people came here today to discuss the post made by Ms. Manning regarding ESL students. Some came to talk about her lack of apology. While all of those things weigh on my mind, there's something I would like to point out that others might not. Ms. Manning, the last time you were called out on discriminatory language and policies, you made it a point to say how offended you were to be called out because you grew up as a minority and your grandmother was Native American. Something very similar to what you can find in your response this time as well. Now, I'm not sure how you grow out of being a minority, but I do know this. I am white passing, but my father is black. I am white passing, but both of my parents are Puerto Rican, straight from the island, and English is their second language. And while I have experienced some racism and discrimination in my life, it does not compare to theirs, and there are privileges that I have that are not always afforded to them. So while I am 100% Hispanic and have black and brown family members, that does not give me a pass to say and do discriminatory acts against any minority. Having someone in your family that is a minority does not excuse racist behavior. So I would implore you to think about this the next time you try to defend your statements or actions with that statement. Anyone who is paying even somewhat attention to the school board has seen you use that line now multiple times. And anyone who isn't a blind supporter of yours can see that you're either using it as a way to gaslight people into not criticizing you for your words or actions, or you truly know what it's like to be a minority and yet you still don't care. And neither of those options make you look better in the eyes of the people you say you care about and are here to serve. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Heischrober, then Teresa Stanley. Speaker 24 had to cancel, so we will move on after that to Annie Palumbo.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Liz Heischrober, and I retired from Virginia Beach City Public Schools in 2005 with 31 years. And I returned to work part-time the fall after I retired for 14 more years to fill shortage positions as a speech-language pathologist and as an ESL teacher. Tonight, I would like to address the budget regarding the ESL program, specifically the hiring of more teachers and the current enrollment. The ESL program started in 1983. At that time, we had 50-plus schools, and now we have nearly 90, which includes 5 specialty programs. 3 teachers started this program. We worked the first year to write curriculum, test students, determine where the greatest need was, and implement a pilot program. The next year in 1984, we each had 8 schools to serve. We were a Band-Aid solution to a much greater need. At that time, there were large numbers of immigrants enrolling from Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand. I would listen to elementary students tell stories of what they went through to get here with their families, and it was heartbreaking. Their journey was worth it, though, because they had the opportunity to have freedom, education, and the chance of a better life. This is what our country was built on, the contributions of many from all over the world. Today, we are a much larger program and still playing catch-up as our numbers increase. We are seeing an influx of immigrants still from all over the world. In the 90s, I had 5 schools and an average of 65 students. When I retired in 2005, I had 3 schools and just as many students. While the school system increased in size, the ESL staff did not. Until recently. In 2013, there were 29 teachers, 31 in 2018, and in 2020, we had 43, which was long overdue. There are many other special programs for students in Virginia Beach with more teachers, fewer students, and larger budgets. ESL has been on the back burner for too many years. Currently, we are still dealing with high numbers enrolling in our schools. ESL staff are still advocating for the rights and needs of these students. You can't close the doors on any of them. You can't decide which groups of students you will let in and those you will keep out. We are a great school system filled with different races, religions, cultural beliefs, and languages. I hear from former students often. One of my students from 26 years ago had an administrative
30
intern friend of
seconds.
his help me. After all this time, he wanted to thank me for helping him when he first arrived from Ukraine. He was a third grader at Lynn Haven Elementary then and knew no English. Today, he's an American citizen, a Ukrainian-American diplomat currently assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Serbia, and is proud to be an American. His father, a resident of Virginia Beach, recently retired with 27 years of service to the city of Virginia Beach. We value the diversity in our schools and our city. You cannot decide who you will enroll or where they come from.
And that is time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Teresa Stanley, then Annie Palumbo, then Jeanette Kikoski.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm a member of the Virginia Beach Human Rights Commission, a proud graduate of Bayside High, and a mother and grandmother of students that attend Virginia Beach Public Schools. I'm speaking to you as the co-chair of the Dismantling Racism, Globalization, and Immigration Working Community of the Tidewater Sowers of Justice. We have over 200 members, most of them residents of Virginia Beach, and we are deeply troubled by the recent negative news reports that our city is yet again making national news. This story involved the Facebook post by school board member Vicki Manning decrying the cost of English as a second language and whether the cost of the program is sustainable. While being a responsible fiscal steward of city resources is laudable, the concern totally loses its impact and credibility when it is expressed as an attack on a specific group of students. Ms. Manning said, "Continuing to educate South Americans is not sustainable." Statements like this are divisive, and they diminish the dignity of these students and their families. We expect better from our elected representatives, no matter their level or political leaning. On behalf of the community, I want to recognize and thank the Virginia Beach ESL teachers, and I want to recognize and thank the Family and Community Engagement Office and creative leadership in schools like W.T. Cook Elementary that have been critical in providing optimal learning environments for all students to succeed. Every student has a right to an education. Wise Virginia Beach Public School leadership has taken responsibility for realizing that diversity is a human asset to be celebrated, and multi-language proficiency is essential for preparing our students for success in a global economy. We need leaders in our community, often with different perspectives, to respectfully seek common ground for the task of deciding how best to use resources wisely, that will also support and appreciate teachers and administrators that are responsible for student success in the classroom. Most importantly, we need to ensure that every student is valued, not marginalized, scapegoated, or bullied, and provided with the education and access to resources needed to succeed.
30
We urge the
seconds.
school board to adequately and fully fund the ESL program, and we as a community must hold Ms. Manning accountable. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Annie Palumbo, then Jeanette Kikoski, and Ellen Jaffrey-Gill.
Good evening.
Well, bravo. Applause for brainwashing everybody, guys. Unbelievable. We might as well all have torches and stakes. You're laughing? You think it's funny? Karma's a bee. You know what I mean by bee. This is like a witch hunt. Unbelievable. Somebody record her because she's smirking and laughing at me. You're a public servant, ma'am.
Let's get back to our topic, please.
That is on topic. Don't interrupt me. Miraculously, COVID's gone. Look, we had seats all taped today. COVID's gone, and you took the tape off the seats when you knew you had opposition for Vicki. It's true. Because you had opposition here. One girl back there, the one after me, threatened me back there. I've got it on video. I've known Vicki for years. I've known Vicki before I got in this fight. Our kids grew up together. She is a good woman. And you guys I've watched you. I've called you mean girls before. You're mean. I know you're behind this. You're all behind this. All of this to get her kicked off of a committee in Richmond so he could be on it? Yeah, I'm pissed. They say most people on opposition will play the race card until they get their way. That's what you did. Keep it up. Keep calling her racist. Keep calling us racist, because it doesn't faze us. Let's go to the February 22nd budget meeting. When it was okay, let's see, it was okay to say what Central America, I can't pull the video up, it didn't come up. You asked Dr. DeVries where these children came from. They said Central America. That wasn't racist. Last time I checked, a continent is not a race. If you want the video, it's out there from February 22nd. So why is it okay for Dr. DeVries to say that? Talk about deflection. Why aren't we asking the questions instead of asking, we know what Vicki said, you all know what Vicki said, and you know what? One day it's gonna come back on all of you. Why aren't we asking, go ahead, turn the cameras off, why these are in our libraries still? Porn. For those of you who don't know, look. Porn's in our libraries. I'm pissed. This is in our libraries, and all you could care about is her saying SEL students are unsustainable.
Ms. Plumbo, please manage the voice level.
I'm sick of this. She's a good woman. And I can't keep my cool.
Order, please, order.
Spence is now on the working group that she got kicked off of. All because you all did this on purpose. Keep it up. Keep it up. Because right now, this is what's in our schools. Not what's sitting up there. And not these SEL students. Has anyone been to the border? Do you know 40% of the children trafficked are from their own families?
Our next speaker is Jeanette Gakowski.
Don't interrupt me.
Then Eileen Jaffrey Gill, and then James St. John's.
Welcome. Welcome, please proceed.
Good evening. I'm speaking here as someone who was an English as a second language student from Colombia, South America, and as someone who has had 2 children graduate from Virginia Beach Public Schools and 2 children who currently attend Virginia Beach Public Schools. I'm here to speak about an extremely valuable program to our community, English as a Second Language, ESL. Virginia Beach school budget totals approximately $1 billion. The increase in funding for the ESL program is less than 1%. In fact, it is less than 0.1% of this budget increase. How is this not sustainable? Providing ESL students with education does not take anything away from other students. It is imperative that this be understood. Speaking a false narrative against ESL told all our English second language students and families that you can't fund this program, that it is not sustainable, which is completely false, Ms. Manning. The obligation not to discriminate based on race, color, or national origin requires public schools to take affirmative steps to ensure that ESL students can meaningfully participate in educational programs and services. It's your duty. The obligation is for you to really understand. At the school board meeting, it was asked what country students were coming from. Why did it matter where the students were coming from, Ms. Manning? Would it have made a difference if they were coming from European countries? School board members are tasked with an important responsibility. Nationally, almost 9 out of every 10 students who receive their education do so in public schools. Board members are more than policymakers and administrators. They are advocates for public education of all children and entrusted to engineer a better future for all of us. And that includes the ESL program. If you don't believe in the education of all children in a public school system, then you should resign. Denying children access to education does not eliminate illegal immigration. Do you understand that? Instead, it ensures the creation of an underclass. Without public education for children, illiteracy rates will increase and opportunities for workforce and community participation will decrease. Research has proven that for every dollar spent on the education of
30
children,
seconds.
at
least $9 is returned. Do you understand the damage that you can do as a board member singling out a group of students? Do you care? If you care, there's healing and hearing a direct, sincere apology. If you care and want all our ESL students to feel welcomed and supported, apologize, especially to those you singled out. Or don't apologize and show where your ignorance,
And that is
racism,
time.
and bigotry stands.
Time's
Our
up.
next speaker is Ellen Jeffrey Gill.
Next speaker,
Speaker
please.
28 had to cancel. We'll go to James St. John and then Sarah Gerloff.
Welcome.
Hello, and thank you, School Board, for your hard work. My name is Rabbi Ellen Jaffe Gill. I am the spiritual leader of Tidewater Chavurah, and for the 7.5 years I've lived in Virginia Beach, I have been a member of the clergy. But before I was a clergy member, I was an English teacher in Los Angeles City Schools. And as an English teacher, mostly in a 7 through 9th grade junior high school, I was at the midpoint between children who began school in ESL beginning and who finished school and went on to good and sometimes elite universities around this country. ESL was necessary to the 80 different language groups represented at my school, and it is at least as important now. I taught children, including in honors classes, who had just come out of the ESL program. Their skills, their insight, their intelligence was at least as sharp as the kids who grew up speaking English. So I'm a veteran of classrooms where I know that ESL works. More than that, I want to speak to the idea that Virginia Beach schools can't really afford to teach ESL. I'm not going to skewer School Board Member Manning for being hateful or racist, but her position that she stated in February is clueless and short-sighted. ESL students are our future. They are not just going to grow up to be to work in restaurants and
30 seconds.
And mopping floors. They are our future nurses and doctors. They are our future teachers. They are ready when they graduate to go on to higher education and fulfill their purpose and their potential in the United States of America as Americans. Thank you.
Our next speaker is James St. John, then Sarah Gerloff, then Karen Blanche Frazier.
Good evening.
Good evening, board members, administrators, and citizens. My name is James St. John. I am the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Hampton Roads. Our official party platform on education reads as follows. Education is best provided by the free market, achieving greater quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity of choice. Recognizing that the education of children is a parental responsibility, we would restore authority to the parents to determine the education of their children without government interference. Parents should have control of and responsibility for all funds expended for their children's education. While libertarians do believe in the freedoms of students and parents to choose in the schooling options that work best for them, we also recognize that public schools currently serve an important purpose in our community. If our government is going to legislate how public schools are run, they must not be allowed to discriminate for any reason, including country of origin. The Libertarian Party of Hampton Road condemns the statement made by Ms. Manning in regards to South American students. We are disappointed that what could have been a respectful and productive conversation about budgetary constraints was used for political pandering. There is no room for political pandering or rhetoric and divisiveness on an elected board whose sole responsibility is to look out for the welfare of our students and teachers. Furthermore, the Libertarian Party platform wholly condemns bigotry as irrational and repugnant. We consider the smallest minority to be the individual. Therefore, each individual student deserves the exact same resources, support, and dignity as any other. I thank you for your time tonight and your service to your community. We wish nothing more than the world to be set free and for those in our community to practice non-aggression upon each other. We call upon all members of this elected board to represent their constituents with decorum, not just constituents with the preferred letter behind their last name, but all constituents. The divide ends with us. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Sarah Gerloff, then Karen Blanche Fraser, and then Amy Solares.
Good evening.
Good evening. Even though I may appear to be one, I speak for many. As I have pointed out in previous speeches, it appears that some on this board and Spence have a problem following real laws. I received a letter from Spence's attorney, Mr. Schwartz, regarding Spence's outside business, EduNavigate Leadership Consultants, LLC. Mr. Schwartz stated, quote, Dr. Spence receives compensation for all of his American Association of School Administrators consulting work through his private company, EduNavigate Leadership Consultants, LLC, end quote. EduNavigate appears to be what is known as a shell company. A shell company is, quote, one that has no meaningful assets or business operations and in popular culture are often used to conceal illegal business or to conceal the owners from law enforcement, the public, or both, end quote. I find this interesting since Spence's content of character certainly appears to be questionable. Mr. Schwartz also provided me with minutes of a meeting that showed Spence's outside business with the American Association of School Administration was approved, but nothing showing EduNavigate was approved. And since EduNavigate is a totally separate entity from American Association of School Administrators, it would also require prior approval, which a FOIA request proves no prior approval was given. Virginia Code 22.1-66 is self-executing because it states, quote, the office of any division superintendent shall be deemed vacant upon his engaging in other business or employment unless prior approval is granted by the school board, end quote. Prior approval is necessary to assure that any outside business will not conflict with the duties as superintendent. Approval after the fact is no longer approval, but instead forgiveness, and the code is clear that prior approval must be granted. So this brings us to another issue. Since Spence engaged in his outside unapproved business, EduNavigate, in August of 2019, and the seat of superintendent was deemed vacant at that moment in time, he has not officially been an employee of Virginia Beach City Public Schools for over 2 years.
30 seconds.
However, tax money earmarked for Virginia Beach City Public Schools has been gifted to him. This is known as misappropriation of funds. Some call it embezzlement. I would like to know how this board plans to recover the more than $500,000 that has been misappropriated to Spence. Does anyone have an answer for me? $500,000, ladies, to somebody who's not employed.
And that is time. Our next speaker is Karen Blanche Fraser, then Amy Solares, then Sally Andrew Gudas.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Karen Fraser. I've been an English as a second language teacher for 16 years. I've taught English language learners from kindergarten to adulthood how to speak, read, write, and develop listening comprehension in English. When I first arrived in Virginia Beach in 2006, I had approximately 10 to 15 students in the ESL program among my 3 schools. This school year, I have close to 40 students at just one school. It is imperative that we have the resources to teach our students effectively. When people move to the United States from other countries, we expect them to learn English in order to function in our society. Yet some people do not want to allocate the resources to teach them. We don't want them to become dependent on social services, but that means they must acquire the English language at a level where they can attain jobs or enter careers that can sustain them. So, what about the other students, the native English speakers? When our native English speakers help our ESL students to acclimate to our country and learn how to speak English, they develop empathy and learn how to be helpful to and supportive of others. They develop a new perspective and learn about different cultures and places around the world in a way that is not offered in a textbook. When I moved to the U.S. from Canada in 1980 as an 11-year-old girl, many of my classmates thought that Canada was part of the United States, or they wondered how I was able to speak English so well if I was from another country. I've met adults who have that same lack of knowledge and information about America's ally to the north. It's too bad they never met anyone from Canada when they were in 6th grade. Imagine if they had gotten to know people from other countries and cultures throughout their lifetimes, how much richer their knowledge of the world would be now. Given our growing population of English language learners coming to us from around the world, our students have this amazing opportunity. It's imperative that we allocate funds to the ESL program to hire more teachers for this growing population. Shouldn't the goal be to always do our best to give everyone who enters our school doors the best education possible, regardless of where they come from, why they came, or how they got here? We can do that if we have a sufficient number of qualified teachers to teach the population of English language learners.
30 seconds.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Have a good night.
Our next speaker is Amy Solares, then Sally Andrew Gudas, and then Thomas Coant.
Welcome. Hi. It's really nice that we have this chamber where we can come in and say what we feel, and it's really nice that people are able to get up and speak. It would have been nice if we had the same kind of support a few weeks ago when another school member boycotted local restaurants and defamed the owners who had donated tens of thousands of dollars to the school board, including their time and energy as well. I received an email yesterday, March 7th, regarding more surveys for our public school students. Not only am I vehemently opposed to these personal and private questions being asked of our students, even as young as 9 and 10 years old in this case and younger in the past, but I'm vehemently opposed to Virginia Beach administration taking time away from our students, which should be used for actually educating our children. This push for self-management and self-awareness is merely an indoctrination of political beliefs. These surveys originate from a company called Panorama Education, which, by the way, is funded by Mark Zuckerberg and Bill and Melinda Gates. This company is owned by the current Attorney General's son-in-law, follow the guidelines of CASEL, which is the framework for CRT. They are getting personal information from our children and doing who knows what with it. Two main issues besides the content of the surveys. Number one, notice was not given as required by the school board's own bylaws, which requires a 30-day notice. And number two, students have protected rights when research comes from third-party vendors, or those outside of the school. These protected rights fall under the Virginia Beach School Board Bylaw 567C, which states parents, legal guardians of minor students must receive notification and provide active informed consent when in regards to the following eight areas of protected information: political affiliations or beliefs, mental or psychological problems of the student or student's family, critical appraisals of others with whom respondents have close familiar relationships. These surveys do not provide for active informed consent, but instead active opt-out, which means the child gets the survey if the parent does not opt out. Last year's surveys were presented to our students, which originated from an organization called Equal Opportunity Schools, which is a nonprofit organization based out in Seattle, Washington, thus a third-party vendor, and there's another one, Virginia Department of Health. These questions in the first survey were asking about sexual identity, gender identity, conversations in the classrooms. They clearly were meant for students to report teachers for not speaking about these topics
30 seconds.
enough. I'd like to note this is the second time in 6 months these exact surveys have been introduced to our children. Why are they being distributed again? Parents, please listen. Virginia Beach leadership is and has been pushing parents out of our children's education and pushing their own political agenda on them. Lastly, I'd like to thank Laura Hughes, Vicki Manning, and Carolyn Weems for their continued support of quality education with parental rights at the forefront. Thank you.
And that is time. Our next speaker is Sally Andrew Gudas, then Thomas Coant, and then Colleen Clemenston.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, members of Virginia Beach School Board and audience here tonight. And I want to especially thank all the ESL program teachers and students that have spoken before. They're a great example of the wonderful job that's being done by the Virginia Beach City Schools. My name is Sally Andrews Gudas, and I am tonight speaking on behalf of my close friend who is a parent of two students who have been to the Virginia Beach City Schools, one who is currently in the Virginia Beach City Schools. My friend is one of the most inspirational people I know, and she has asked me to speak her words tonight, to be her voice. These are her words. Quote, I and my kids have benefited from the ESL program, and they have been very successful, and we are very grateful for this program. I have volunteered at the schools for several years, helping to reach the Hispanic population. I first began volunteering by first writing a note in English that said, quote, hi, my name is, and I want to volunteer at the school. I started volunteering at that school right away, and they introduced me to a Spanish-speaking teacher who I volunteered with. The school was very open to help us, just as we were volunteering to help them. My oldest child began school many years ago, and I have ever since then been helping to advocate at the schools for my children and other Hispanic children to have access to all activities, extracurricular activities, gifted and other programs. We have also benefited from the Hispanic Voice program. Many other parents are now being helped by this program to have a good relationship with the school by that program, which welcomes all Hispanic parents. Also, my son, who is currently a student in Virginia Beach City Schools, now speaks, and he speaks Spanish, knows sign language, he took Russian and 4 years of Latin, and now he helps the other ESL students. So these are my friend's words. She's a strong, resilient, resourceful member of the Virginia Beach community for many years, and she, as many other immigrants, is part of the fabric of this wonderful city in which we live. These are my words. It is the law, but also our moral responsibility to provide a strong public education to all the children in our community.
30 seconds.
Including those who do not speak English. Virginia Beach has developed and continuously improved the ESL and other programs over the years. I have a little bit more to say, but I would like to say that I volunteer with a group of families who live within the W.T. Cook Elementary School District, and I'm so happy tonight to have heard the wonderful principal speak, and I can tell you firsthand that those children who attend that school are in great hands. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Thomas Coant, then Colleen Clemenson, and Connor Epley.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to express my disgust toward the local media, Virginia Secretary of Education, and this school board for egregiously smearing and wrongfully twisting comments made by Miss Vicki Manning on her private social media. A recent Wavy News article stated school board member Victoria Manning was removed from Governor Youngkin's Lab and Innovation Schools Working Group after she made controversial comments about students learning English as a second language. This is a gross mischaracterization of what Ms. Manning said. Her comments were not aimed at students, as so many tonight implied, but at the inability to sustain continual increases to the budget as more and more students with special needs, including ESL, enter our system. She's clearly concerned about current and future shortfalls in all areas, of which ESL is simply an example. Isn't that the job of the school board? How are we going to pay for this? Where will you get the funds to fill all these staffing needs? And even if funds are found, how are you going to address the fact that we are bleeding teachers faster today than we can hire new ones? One third grade teacher stated, in our third grade alone, we have lost 3 teachers this year. My class, the entire third grade, is a mess. This doesn't have anything to do with ESL, but has everything to do with the pressure teachers have been under over the last 2 years. Lack of consistency combined with unsupportive parents and guardians, emotional, behavioral, and learning disability students is a melting pot for disaster. Add ESL students to that classroom and one person can't control or properly educate these babies. How can we continue to ask our teachers to do more work because we can't staff what is currently there, much less continue to be faced with a growing ESL population? Ms. Manning has consistently asked the right questions. Why weren't our schools open when there was no scientific reason to shut them down? Why did we continue to harm our children with totally useless masks? Why do we focus on dividing our children by race and subjecting them to indoctrination that leads to further racial conflicts? Why do we put sexually explicit materials in reach of minors in our schools? These issues aim at bringing our schools back to the only valid mission: teach our kids to read, to do math, to know real science, to understand history, and become lifelong learners who are productive citizens. There's nothing racist or hateful in anything Miss Manning has done. If you believe Vicki Manning is racist or bigoted, you do not know Vicki Manning. This
30
board has
seconds.
demeaned and smeared this lady and her two colleagues who are standing up for students and parents and doing the proper job of a school board. It's time for the others to lay politics aside and start to serve this community. I've said it before and I say it again. You spend so much time doing what is not your job. Educating our kids is your job. Ms. Manning is trying very hard to do that job with grace and integrity. Why don't the rest of you just do your job? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Colleen Clemston, and then Connor Epley, and then Raphael Nagron.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick. It's so nice to see all the members of the school board. I know it's been a while since I've been here. I've been a little busy lately. I started off the school year full-time teaching, but after a 12-year maternity leave, my family wasn't doing so hot. So I've taken a step back, but I'm still in the district. I'm still working for you all. I want to speak on my role as a former classroom teacher. As a classroom teacher, I had the opportunity to have ESL students in my class. They have been some of my hardest working and inquisitive students in my room. I worked as hard as I can to try and give them the education that they deserve, that all children deserve. I have worked with students with multiple disabilities. I have worked with students who come from different economic classes. And I will say that teaching ESL students is probably one of the most challenging. And that is because my background is K through 6 elementary education, general ed. I've never been trained in ESL. I don't have any certifications. Luckily, though, I was blessed to work with some wonderful ESL teachers, of whom would take the time to check in on me and who I could go to for some help. However, most days I went home feeling like I have failed my students, because what could I do? I didn't speak their language. Google Translator was a wonderful thing this year. We had a lot of conversations through Google Translator, but still, I felt like I was failing them. And it's not because I didn't try, but because I didn't know exactly what to do. I did have an assistant come into my room, which was amazing, but she was only there for one period of the day, a couple days a week. And then during reading times, when my children were doing independent work, even though I did take the extra time away from my family to translate the choice board assignments for my ESL student, I still felt like I was depriving that student. Like, are they doing okay? Do they understand? Are they really getting it? So let's talk about ESL. Yes, $1 million. Our ESL population has exploded. Okay. Therefore, the budget has to explode a little bit with it. It makes common sense. And so what are we going to do? Where is that money coming from? As a teacher, you know, I always keep my eye and ear to the ground and say, okay, well, where is this money coming from?
30 seconds.
Where are we going to pull it from? I thank Vicki, even though her name is being smeared throughout, for bringing this to the forefront. Maybe she didn't put it in the way that most of us, or most people, would probably have liked it, but it's out there. And the positive, because I choose to focus on the positive after the 2 years we've had, is that she has brought ESL to the forefront. She is not the woman that she is perceived to be. I've had many conversations with her, and I thank her very much. And I'm hoping we can keep the
And that is
ESL program.
time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Connor Epley, then Raphael Nigron. Speaker 38 has not checked in, and then will be Virginia Wasserberg.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Connor Epley. I am a 2020 Princeton High School graduate. I'm here tonight to speak up and stand up for ESL students and families. I wish I could say that the Facebook post Ms. Manning made where she said, "Continuing to educate South Americans is unsustainable," was surprising and shocking, but it wasn't. Ever since Ms. Manning has been on the school board, she has consistently gone after minority students and families in her quest to further her own political agenda. For those who may say that what she said wasn't racist or an attack on ESL students and families, let me point out a few things. First, we are legally required to offer ESL services to students. So whether or not we should continue providing these services is not up for debate. Secondly, we receive state and federal funding for these programs. This is not something that we solely have to fund as a school district. Lastly, there are many other services that we are also legally required to offer and receive state and federal funding for, such as PALS and special education services. Both of those are seeing an increase in need as well. However, Ms. Manning only attacked the one that has students and families who don't speak English as a first language. She also specifically mentioned South American and Hispanic students in her post. All of our students and families deserve to be met where they are, and the school district has a responsibility, both legally and morally, to provide them with all services they need to be successful. This shouldn't be a political debate. Yet again, a school board member has taken a non-partisan, apolitical issue and made it a political one. Ms. Manning's post is not representative of the school system that I was raised in. While I attended Virginia Beach City Public Schools, all students, no matter where they came from before they walked into the doors of our schools, were loved and cared for by staff and given a top-notch education. This is still true today, and we cannot allow anyone to try to move us away from this standard. Community and state leaders and organizations have come together in a bipartisan, apolitical way to condemn this behavior. All of you on the dais must hold her accountable to the maximum extent possible. Thank you, and thank you for letting me speak tonight. I hope you do the right thing.
Our next speaker is Raphael Nigron, then Virginia Wassenberg. Speaker 40 has not checked in. Then will be Conrad Schrentzfranter.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Raphael Negron, Sr., and I am the proud father of 2 children in the Virginia Beach Public School System. This is my first time attending a school board meeting. As I was reading through the agenda for today's meeting, I came across information regarding the VSBA's equity policy. After doing some research, I decided to come and speak here today to let you know that there are parents who disagree with this policy and anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and programs. Furthermore, this includes being against all critical theory policies and programs to include critical social justice theory, critical race theory, and all other subcategories of critical theory. These programs and policies are divisive, segregative, and discriminatory against faculty and students alike. I consider any time, energy, and money spent on these policies and programs to be fraud, waste, and abuse, and the Virginia Beach school system can spend resources in much better ways. I do not want my children or the faculty and staff that take part in their education to be a part of a discriminatory program that makes its decisions based on gender, gender identity, sexuality, race, or religious preference. Hire the best teachers for the job without using these criteria and allow the students to earn their way into gifted and honor programs just the same. When I was growing up in the Hampton Roads school system, I didn't need any of my teachers to be a certain race to succeed. All I needed was a teacher who was good at teaching and who cared. You don't have to be a certain race to have these qualities. Black, Hispanic, or other minority students are not less intelligent than white students. White students are not more intelligent than black and brown students. Black and brown students do not need white students to be discriminated against to be successful. And black and brown teachers do not need white teachers to be discriminated against to get hired and be good at their jobs. Hiring education faculty and staff based on skin color or gender makes for a toxic work environment that ultimately affects the children's learning environment. Since the word community seems to be a buzzword these days, then I'd like to make you aware of a community that matters the most, the child-student community. This community consists of children, students of all races, genders, and religious backgrounds and should not be separated based on these criteria. All black and brown students are not alike. All white students are not alike. All male students are not alike. All female students are not alike. The natural diversity created by God already exists and doesn't need us discriminating against each other in a failed attempt at improving it. Thank you for your time.
30 seconds.
Glory.
Our next speaker is Virginia Wassenberg. Speaker 40 has not checked in. It would be Conrad Schrenzventer. And 42 and 43 have not checked in. Then we'll move on to Diana Howard.
Good evening.
Good evening. After Governor Youngkin issued Executive Order 2, making masks optional in schools, I sat in this room and I listened online to many concerned students, parents, and community members expressing their concern about students that are autoimmune compromised and could be negatively affected by COVID-19 due to masking choice. Masking choice became a law on Wednesday, February 16th. On the morning of Friday, February 18th, I previewed a video of a Virginia Beach delegate, a Democrat, giving a point of personal privilege from the House floor. She spoke about her daughter, who is a VBCPS school student and is also a friend of mine, and she is autoimmune compromised. The delegate spoke not only as a representative of her district, but as a mother, and asked at my side of the aisle, the Republicans, if we could have a conversation about helping students like her daughter. As a mother and as a COVID survivor, I empathized with her, and I heard the delegate. That very morning, I reached out to my school board district representative, the chair and vice chair via email, and requested an in-person meeting with budget staff to see if we couldn't find room in the budget to help students like this delegate's daughter. Mrs. Melnick, you responded to my email with a phone call in which I expressed my concern that these students deserve to be able to go to a classroom and feel safe, and their parents deserve to know they could be safe as well. I refused to accept that helping students like the delegate's daughter was unsustainable. I still refuse to accept that because it's not unsustainable for the school system. And after taking an hour and a half on the phone with you, we arrived at an idea that you told me you would take to Dr. Spence and that you'd get back with me about. And a week later, Ms. Melnick, you called me back, and I thought it was to discuss my concern about the budget, but it wasn't about that. It was to complain to me about a Facebook post that another school board member made. You called me to complain about politics. And now I stand here before all of you today, and you're about to take a vote to approve a budget, and I'm wondering, Ms. Melnick, did you speak with Dr. Spence? Did you and he agree that
30
helping
seconds.
autoimmune compromised students like the delegate's daughter is unsustainable for the division in an over $1 billion budget? Or did you find room in the $1 billion budget to help them, as was my request? I'd truly appreciate to know what that outcome was. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Conrad Schrenzventer, then Diana Howard, then Monica Sarmiento.
Good evening.
Faith W.S., mother of my Virginia Beach niece and nephew, writes the following as a mother, organizer, and former educator. I'm writing to you as a former Virginia Beach City Public School teacher. I taught in VB for 5 years, and in those years worked with some of the largest populations of ECAL students. I think of their faces now as I send you this message. I think about their kindness, their resilience, and their commitment to excellence in our schools. I think about how they would feel knowing that one of their school board members, who was elected to serve and protect their best interest, decided to pit the community against them. Ms. Manning's post asked the community to turn its back on select members and makes the claim that some children are just too expensive because of where they came from. When we know the education of all children in our community is worth whatever the price may be, and that we are the ones who benefit when we embrace diversity. Ms. Manning put a target on the backs of our ESL students and must be held accountable for it. I'm sure Ms. Manning will attempt to defend her behavior by claiming this was a private social media post exchanged between friends, but I would remind her of the social contract we all enter into when we sign up to be public servants and the social media guidelines all Virginia Beach City Public School employees are expected to follow. It is my hope that the school board will take action to address this horrifying racist rhetoric with urgency. Thank you. And now for Conrad Stake. I ran for a Rose Hall seat in a year that Jessica Owens won big, and I'm happy she won, and I'm proud of her. I look forward to voting for Kim Bentley in November, and have a great night.
Our next speaker is Diana Howard, then Monica Sarmiento, and then Rashid Gould.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank Miss Manning for being such an active school board member. She has been an advocate for students and teachers and parents. And in an effort to inform her constituents, she made a Facebook post that has been villainized, to say the least. Okay, it doesn't matter where the children come from, what country, it is our obligation to educate them. She understands that. Nowhere in her post did she say we shouldn't educate them. Nowhere in her post did she say that we should not hire ESL teachers, okay? What she did point out is that we are 100 teachers short. 100 teachers short. How are you going to address that? Is there anywhere that you are addressing that issue? Adding more teachers doesn't help address 100 teachers short. Of those 100 teachers, sure, they can be, special education teachers, they could be ESL teachers. How are we addressing them? Okay, I've been in this room many times, and I've heard teachers come up here and speak about the problems in their classrooms, the amount of students they have, or the security, or the discipline problems. Why are we 100 teachers short, and how are we going to address that? That is the issue that she brought up. That is what is unsustainable here. Adding more people to the budget just pads the budget with more salaries that at the end of the year you had a $54 million surplus. Most of that was probably people that you were unable to hire that left their salaries. The same thing happened with City Council, $81 million surplus. Okay? So, yes, we do need to educate the children. That is what we're here to do. It is our responsibility, and she never said we shouldn't. Now we need to address the real problem, the underlying problem. How do we attract teachers and keep them? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Monica Sarmiento, then Rashid Gould, and then it'll be Melissa Luxon, who is speaker number 15, who is now here.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Monica Sarmiento. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights, a collaborative of 45 organizations in the Commonwealth that are invested in the immigrant rights movement, many who serve the immigrant community here in the Commonwealth. We sent a letter to you yesterday addressing the hurtful comments School Board Manning made that felt derogatory, specifically attacking Spanish-speaking students. Long before I was the executive director of the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights, my family and I immigrated from El Salvador. And we came here with a dream to be able to go ahead and become the American life. And for me, that meant ESL was my first introduction to any source of English in my life. And I've spent my life dedicating my time to uplifting my community in so many different ways, and now in this nonprofit. The hurtful attacks when you name specifically South Americans, Ms. Manning, feels very hateful towards this particular community when we have seen an explosion of white supremacy in our country. Virginia is very unique where we are the 9th largest immigrant population in the United States. We are the welcoming post to every refugee that comes to the United States. Nearly 20% of these students come from military families here in Virginia Beach. And that is what has been so hurtful. And we need to go ahead and show that this is not a bullying place for anyone, to create a welcoming area. So in order to be able to go ahead and show that this American dream really is accessible, because we know it's constitutionally obligated, we need to be able to do better because students, when given the opportunity, will succeed and make us all proud. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rashid Gould, and then Melissa Luxon.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Okay, our next speaker is Melissa Luxon.
Good evening.
Good evening. If I say nothing else tonight, I hope what I'm about to say will challenge every white person in this room and watching live. You are a racist, or you are an anti-racist. There is no such thing as not a racist. I am, she is, they are, not a racist, equals neutrality. Neutrality always takes the side of the oppressor. Microaggressions and coded language is how white people have maintained systemic racism in this country. Systemic racism is racism embedded as normal practice in institutions like education, which means you've got to be continually working towards equality for all races, striving to undo racism in your mind, your personal environment, and the wider world. In other words, you've got to be an anti-racist. Unless, of course, you are a racist. I'm so tired of people running around with a mouth full of scripture and a heart full of hate. Imagine professing to love the Lord, yet being so indignant and self-righteous that you double down and blame others instead of doing some self-reflection. Accountability and taking responsibility means affirming the mistake and apologizing to the people authentically, without excuses. Trying to paint your intentions as a fiscal discussion is a play straight out of the Southern strategy. This top-down narrative intentionally appeals to racial grievances originally weaponized against African Americans, now being used against all people of color. White people have been wagging our tongues with impunity since we came out the womb. This behavior isn't new. They're just saying the quiet part out loud. As an elected official, you use personal social media page to pander to your chosen audience. What privilege? I mean white privilege. Vicky, if you genuinely wanted to debate or have a dialogue with your constituents about your budget concerns, then why do you not have a government official page on social media platforms to encourage civil discourse? Why do you hide behind your political action committee? To the people standing here tonight defending a woman who thinks teaching children from South America is not sustainable, sustainability is only applied to goods and services, not people. Targeting a specific group of students based on the region their families emigrated from in the name of the budget
30
is an
seconds.
age-old racist trope. How do you propose solving your sustainability concerns for children residing in Virginia Beach and receiving services required by the state and federal government? The Q Moms Plus 3 would be roasting a BIPOC member of this board for saying, for example, they don't think it's sustainable to keep busing in students from Pungo due to increased fuel expenses. Vicky Manning should resign. She isn't fit to make policies for the most vulnerable students in the city. Instead, knowing that your words have hurt and outraged your
And that is
constituents,
time.
you chose bad advice from a political cleaner.
Madam Chair, that was our last in-person speaker. We'll move on to our online speakers. Sarah Clark, please unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening. Virginia Beach City Public School administrators, teachers, counselors, custodians, bus drivers, security officers, countless other staff members, parents, and most school board members put students first, seek growth, and are open to change, do great work together, and value differences. It is shameful that some school board members cannot claim membership in this proud group. Whether it's endorsing censorship of minority authors, directing community outrage toward educators embracing culturally responsive practices, or most recently, diminishing the value of our English language learners. Some school board members choose to put themselves first, prevent others from seeking growth, resist change, divide the community, and diminish the value of diversity. This is unsustainable. After such a public display of cultural insensitivity, one would expect a retraction or an apology. Instead, the community was fed false claims meant only to distract rather than heal, and continue to divide rather than unite. This is unsustainable. Rather than bemoan public scrutiny, I challenge you to acknowledge the pain your words caused our community. I encourage you to reflect on the BBCPS mission and your individual efforts to act upon it. So many educators across the city do so each day, so it's fair to demand the same of each school board member. Thank you.
Speaker number 2 had to cancel. We'll move on to speaker number 3. Kat Evans, please unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, the board, and Dr. Spence. I will keep my comments brief. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. I grew up in a multilingual household. My father came here from Iran and has had to face endless discrimination, stereotyping, and racism. He has lived in the U.S. for 40 years and still experiences racism, prejudice, and discrimination to this day. He's a successful entrepreneur, keen businessman, and a highly educated engineer and contractor. My father's a naturalized U.S. citizen with dual citizenship. Despite his thick accent, he is very intelligent and pays a great deal of taxes and always exercises his right to vote. As a child, myself and my siblings were discriminated against and called hateful names for being Persian. There was a great deal of discrimination against the Iranians in the 80s. I'm a proud Iranian American and I love my heritage. I'm also a third grade teacher. I previously taught ESL students and I currently have an ESL student in my class. She is a gift, and I can't begin to tell you how impactful the ESL program is for these students. The statements made against the ESL program are very hurtful and damaging to our ESL students, their families, and the ESL teachers who support them. Noni Lasso, co-author of a new study on the reading development of ESL children, said that bilingualism need not be a liability with very effective instruction. It can actually be a distinct advantage. In fact, one of the most valuable assets these learners have for subsequent literacy development is their native language skill. In a study by ARU in Cambridge to investigate how babies can easily learn multiple languages, researchers found that living in a bilingual home helps children develop greater flexibility in acquiring new information, even before they learn to speak at all. With the ESL program being so very important and impactful, we need to support our ESL teachers by hiring more ESL teachers, hiring a scheduling secretary, clustering ESL students in classrooms, and giving the ESL teachers smaller caseloads so that they can better support our ESL students. These students are amazing, beautiful, and intelligent children who remarkably are able to speak 2 or more languages. Look into your own xenophobia and revisit your biases towards immigrants and
30
English language
seconds.
learners. I will end with one statement. Khosh Amadid, which in Farsi is all are welcome here. Merci, so bekhair. Thank you. Good night.
Our next speaker is Brian Sullivan. Please unmute.
I'd like to by honoring 3 Hispanic Americans who have left their mark on America and on the world. One is Selena, a major international superstar and an inspiration and a hope to millions. So Elaine Ochoa, who flew on the Space Shuttle Discovery and became the first woman and Hispanic director of the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And there's Sylvia Rivera, a social activist who's credited with putting the T in LGBTQ. There's just no limit to what our students can become, all of them. As you may have noticed, all 3 were women. I did this in honor of Women's History Month. The Heritage Foundation is a national organization promoting the ban the CRT movement, to ban something that was not taking place. They helped organize small groups of people all over the country to speak the same words and the same phrases at the same time while performing coordinated disruptions of school boards. The Heritage Foundation having a long history of opposing public schools. The last time the Heritage Foundation made a foray into Virginia Beach was in 2012 when they took us to court as they tried to get Virginia to mine uranium, risking our water supply at Lake Glaston. Virginia Beach helped run them out of town. In the past few years, they've been holding symposiums and generating media promoting the idea that women are better off as a wife and a mother, leaving men to be the wage earner. Their lead spokesman, Vodi Bachman, is consistently promoting that women are best suited to be bound, kitchen bound, and pregnant, just as long as they were virgins
Excuse me,
prior
if
to
we
marriage.
could, to K-12 education, please. Please continue.
I'll be coming around to that, if you will. It's an ongoing campaign against women. So I have to wonder, since some of our school board members seem to be devoted followers of this Heritage Foundation, how long will it be until they act to ban women's history books because they're fearful of what they will do to female sensibilities, or try to ban books on women's reproduction, calling it pornography? How long until someone says out loud that teaching female students is becoming unsustainable? Ms. Manning, I think it's appallingly negligent for the Heritage Foundation to make you bring racist hate, destruction, and fear into our grade schools in a destructive attempt to influence adult politics.
30 seconds.
Does not belong here. Run for delegate if they'll have you. That's where your argument belongs, not here. I would ask you to consider stepping aside and allowing someone who would be proud to teach all of our students to go on and change the world. Thank you.
Speaker number 5 had to cancel. We'll move on to Glenna Resland. Please unmute.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. I teach kindergarten and currently have 4 ESL students who are amazing. To say that educating them is not sustainable is to say that we don't believe these children deserve to communicate in the language of the country that they are in. They are children. They don't get to choose where they live. I was stationed in a foreign country for 15 years with my husband where I didn't speak the language. Had it not been for the people of that country teaching me the language, I would not have made the lifelong connections that I now have. It allowed me not to just survive in a country where I didn't originally speak the language, but to thrive. I have taken that with me into my teaching, as every student in Virginia Beach has the right to also not just survive, but to thrive. And as I was overseas, I was teaching with DODEA and have taught many NATO country children to include American children that were also ESL. And to again say that teaching them is not sustainable is doing them a disservice, but also a disservice to ourselves. These children are our future doctors, teachers, scientists, etc. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dana Brown. Please unmute.
Good evening.
Last year, I was nominated as Virginia's National Outstanding Assistant Principal. I was the first Latina to earn that award in Virginia. 2 years ago, Governor Northam appointed me as an advisory board member. I have worked since then on multiple governor groups, and I have even chaired some of those working groups. In short, I am an active educator, supporter of students in my community. I have you know, I am also a former ESL student. Educating me was worth it and sustainable. But I am here today for one simple reason. I'm advocating for the future of this Commonwealth, the students' right to a public education. One of your board members made a comment on Twitter that lent itself to be interpreted as an invitation to public citizens to engage in what may be considered a civil rights violation of a group of students due to their origin. In addition, her comments have sparked flames of racism and even classism. The same member explained later that she was merely advocating for resources for the group of students. I've been advocating for students of my own for more than 2 decades, and I can tell you that the tweet was devoid of any advocacy intention. Could she have misspoken? That is now left to debate and for you to consider as a board. As you sort through intentions and meaning, we have students who were affected by these words. We have families who have lost trust on you as a board to put students first. As a district, you are not painted with the harsh strokes of racism against students who are from South America, Central America, or students who receive English as a second language services. Her tweets and consequent Explanations insulted the public's intelligence and made us doubt hers. For reference, racism and classism involves a negative prejudgment which purposes to maintain control and power. Each has the ability to control and destroy lives. They work to establish a defined norm or a standard of rightness under which everyone is judged. The defined norm is the notion that some may accept and promote for various reasons. And racism ranges from dislike and avoidance of particular racial groups to discrimination to violence and aggressive acts. Racism can express itself through spittle actions or assumptions to direct aggressive action taken against a specific race. We do not want this type of racism exhibited, nor to be escalated. I'm asking you to act as a board, give students respect, resources, and ask her to resign. It is not about cancel culture. It is about our students and what we will accept as normal culture. Model what you expect. Live your values. Send a message of hope to families and clearly signal that you are not.
Our next speaker is Nihal Gokus. Please unmute.
Good evening. My name is Nihal Gokus. I'm an associate professor of management at Norfolk State University, teaching strategic management, ethics, and diversity classes. I'm Turkish American. I'm a resident of Virginia Beach and a mother of 2 young men who are currently a part and product of Virginia Beach school system. I'm here to speak in response to Ms. Manning's comments about the unsustainability of ESL programs due to the increasing number of immigrant students from South American countries. Before I start, I want to inform everybody here that my time and opinions are not bought out by anybody or Ms. Manning's opponents. I will focus my comments on the strategic importance of managing diversity in our schools and larger society. Whether we accept it or not, the American population is increasingly becoming more diverse. By the year 2050, today's minorities of Asians, African Americans, and Hispanic Latinos in combination will constitute the majority of the American population. This means that today's children will be expected to function productively in a society where diversity will be a norm, a way of life. A diverse population is an asset, not a burden. Diversity brings change, innovation, creativity, and development to the groups, institutions, and the nations. Many businesses have already recognized the importance of a diverse workforce for their competitive advantage and made managing diversity as their strategic priority. This also means that the school systems are in a unique position to effect this change by preparing our students for this diverse future. This is possible only if the school systems, administrators, and board members recognize the strategic importance of diversity in all segments of the society, including the school systems, and allocate enough of the necessary resources right now to harness the benefits of the diversity now and in the future. However, this requires a major shift in perspective. If the investment in the ESL programs is seen as a burden and unsustainable budget item, this strategic goal will never be achieved. That's why I urge the Virginia Beach school system and its board members to see diversity as a strategic asset for America's future and increase the budgets not only for the effective ESL programs, but also for additional diversity and inclusion initiatives to embrace and celebrate diversity for the entire school district. For this matter, I'm deeply disappointed by the lack of strategic vision held by one of the school board members. I'm hoping that this will...
time.
Thank you.
Speaker 9 is not online. We'll move on to Becky Hay. Please unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening. I saw footage of a large crowd out in the parking lot tonight, a rally of sorts. I'm hoping they had the appropriate permit to be meeting there prior to the board meeting. First, I just wanted to say that I'm not a blind supporter of Vicki. I've known her and I'm here to speak on her behalf. But first, I'd just like to say that it's been quite appalling tonight to listen to all of the assumptions made, the false conclusions drawn, the self-righteous statements given, and the attempts at character assassination. A few people looked to be offended by something Vicky stated on her own personal page, and they went in turn and activated the mob. Most of the people claiming that they were hurt tonight actually didn't know anything about this until they were told to be upset about it. And that's really frustrating to me, because there's those of us that have been involved with speaking to the school board for years. We know what's going on here. Some of these people that have come to speak tonight, I'm really sorry, but you do not know the context in which you speak. I'm wondering if several of the people there tonight, including board members, were so concerned about ESL students in the ESL program when the schools were closed, because we do know that these students were negatively impacted during the school closures. And I can tell you that Vicky was one of the few board members to consistently and repeatedly work to get our students back in schools. A few weeks ago, it was brought up that the district is missing several math teachers, but I don't hear anyone being all upset about the fact that we can't hire more math teachers. So I think it's understood that we are lacking resources, and this was definitely a conversation regarding budget. But again, those of you looking to be offended, looking for a reason to go after Vicky, yet again, got what you were looking for and rallied the troops to come and assassinate her character tonight. Vicky, I want you to remember about Saturday morning. I want you to remember the people who came to support you, the people who know you, the people that know what your intent was, the people that prayed for you. Those are the people that are behind you day in and day out. These other people that are coming to spew their vitriol at you, they don't count. I'm sorry, but they are here to just hurt you and tear you apart. They know that you are effective in what you do. They know that you are working for students across the board. And I just want you to remember that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight. I'm thankful that all sides get a chance at the table, but this continuous attack on Vicky has got to stop. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Baker. Please unmute.
Can you all hear?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
First, I would like to state that I am a third-generation American. My great-grandparents had to flee just outside Kiev because they were Jewish and being persecuted. We are a nation of immigrants, and I think we should take that in as all this is discussed. I would like to thank Carolyn Weems, Laura Hughes, and Victoria Manning for asking questions and fighting for the students, parents, and constituents of Virginia Beach. I would like to kindly ask that the board put aside personal feelings and take care of business that so desperately needs to be discussed, like the budget or why my high school students still do not have one lunch. If the budget does not include transportation and fixing the bus driver shortage that I have been informed about from transportation since 2017, there will be no way for ESL, special education, or general education students to get to school. I received this note from my child's elementary school just today, and this is not the first time either. This is elementary school to inform you that students who ride bus blank will be riding bus blank tomorrow morning. Said bus will pick up students on a second run. They have to drop off their students at the elementary school before picking up your students for school. There will be a delay. Students will not be counted tardy if it runs late. Thank you for your understanding. Please put aside your ill will towards one another and do the business you are elected to do. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Stephanie Baker. Please unmute. Okay, our next speaker is Braden Wicks. Please unmute.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. I'm a former elementary teacher and I'm in favor of a pre-Labor Day start. Yes, I'm switching the narrative on all the comments right now. But I have a hard time supporting the 23-24 calendar. I taught at the beach for many years and also taught in Hampton for 6 years. For 4 of the 6 years in Hampton, I was on the district's calendar committee and in the regional calendar committee. During his previous presentation, Dr. Saltner emphasized the high percentage of parents that completed the survey in favor of the pre-Labor Day start. I would like to know the total percentage of parents who actually participated in the survey. If we knew the total percentage of parents, this might paint a very different picture of how many parents support an early start. I requested this information February 26th, and I never got an answer. The calendar was also presented with feedback from teachers for not front-loading work days and to have longer breaks. Unfortunately, it does not meet these requests. Front-loading is now just disguised. Teachers will have the same number of days and will be in the classroom with students versus having teacher work days at the beginning of the year. Summer break is now shorter. With the school year ending in mid-June and teachers going back to school the third week of August, summer break is shorter for teachers and staff. As far as I can tell from comparing calendars and counting, Thanksgiving break is the only break that's actually longer. It went from 2 days to 3. Last year, winter break was 8 days. This year, 7 days. 23-24 calendars, 7 days. Spring break is the same, 5 days. The desire for longer breaks has not been met. Many school board members make comments all the time about supporting teachers and how important it is that teachers feel heard. I find it shocking that this calendar could pass as there is only one early release day at the end of the year for teachers to close out the year. Since many board members are former teachers, they know it takes a lot more than one release day to close out the year. This does not support teachers. I understand it is important to get a calendar approved for planning purposes, but I would ask that a board member make a motion tonight to table this vote. There is room for improvement on this calendar. If the board moves forward with a vote to approve this calendar, I ask that improvements are made for future calendars. Breaks are not longer, front loading is still happening, and 4 days is not enough of a reason for a pre-Labor Day start when 3 days are lost in the first 9 weeks. I know a lot of time and energy was spent into creating 2 calendars. This is why I wanted to offer some suggestions as opposed to just complaining about the calendar. I did so in my original email sent February 26th. I did not get a response until 2 a.m. last night and was told there was limited time to review my extensive feedback. I disagree. I am disappointed that the choice to respond wasn't until late last night to actually discuss suggestions. But after tonight's comments, I obviously know why. Please consider tabling tonight's vote until further discussion is made with the calendar. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Vic Nichols. Please unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening. I wanted to talk about 2 of the resolutions. The Women's History Month, I'm not sure why you're going to have that because the votes from a board majority would put them in situations that could be potentially harmful to them. So I don't exactly see that as a good thing. The VSBA Equity in Education. It seems like the past few years, there are a number of things that have been tried and they're not working. The 4th grade African-American students in Richmond Public Schools, which was majority minority, for 2018-2019, there was 49% functionally illiterate rate. I just saw another sample that came out a few days ago that showed African-American and Hispanic kids where reading skills are in the single digits. I'm not sure why we're going to do anything with the VSBA when it doesn't seem like a number of things that are getting done actually are not helping out minority kids. And that's really where it needs to go on. The next concern that I had was about the religious exemption case. If you take a look at the requirements, I'm trying to figure out just exactly why the government is going to sit here and say, well, that's not political, it's social or philosophical, but it's specifically religious. I find that would probably be very problematic, not just hearing some of the speakers and the way they've gone after some of the minority views on the school board. I'm also pretty disturbed hearing what I have from assumptions and everything else of what people have said tonight and how they would react to that. So all of that together makes me really wonder, why is the government giving religious exemptions anyway? And if they give them, are they going to give them equally to each religion, given what has been displayed off of the majority of the board? Thank you.
Speaker 14 is not online. We will go to Lindsay Nathaniel. Please unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening, Superintendent Spence, Chairwoman Rye, and school board members. My name is Lindsay Nathaniel. I'm the mother of a junior at Princess Anne High School, and in a few short years, my youngest will be at Thalia Elementary. Every student matters. 70 speakers tonight, and only maybe 6 or so supported Ms. Manning. That speaks volumes. I stand with ESL students. I'm disappointed at the narrative that this is somehow a witch hunt and it's somehow the media's fault, or better yet, the left. What happened to accountability? No matter how your supporters try and reinterpret or rephrase your words, we all saw them. Words matter, Ms. Manning. You can try and blame your hurtful words on budgetary concerns, but we all see through it. Budgetary concerns wouldn't target a specific group of children. Did you forget this is about children? Targeting a group of students the way you did was in fact racist, Ms. Manning, and I'm deeply disappointed that you've done nothing to address your hurtful words. White supremacy has no place on our school board, and therefore, Ms. Manning, you should resign.
Madam Speaker, is that it?
And that was our last speaker for this evening.
Okay. Thank you. So now that brings us to the consent agenda. And I will read through the list, and it includes 2 resolutions which will be read as well. We begin with the 2 resolutions, Women's History Month and VSBA Equity and Education Month. Then we have B, English as a Second Language Program, K-12 Comprehensive Evaluation, C, Student Response Teams Outcome Evaluation, D, recommendation of general contractor, 1, First Colonial High School locker removal, 2, First Colonial High School gym bleacher replacement, and 3, Holland Road Annex RTU replacement. And maybe is there a staff member who can tell us what that RTU is? Before I continue with the list. The RTU replacement.
Rooftop units, so it's air conditioning and heating. Oh, I'm sorry. Rooftop units, so it's air conditioning and heating.
Thank you. E, policy review recommendations, policy 369, contract maintenance. 2, policy 370, equipment. 3, policy 376, transportation generally. 4, policy 377, transportation and non-transportation zones. 5, policy 378, schedules, routes, and stops, traffic control plan. 6, policy 3-80, school board-owned vehicles. 7, policy 3-81, vehicle maintenance. 8, policy 3-86, school cafeterias. And section F is religious exemptions. So before I call for a motion, can we please have these 2 resolutions read, beginning with Women's History Month? Mrs. Anderson.
Resolution for Women's History Month, March 2022. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our school division, communities, and nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. Whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. Whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of our city and nation by providing the majority of the teaching force of the nation. Whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation that are still evident today. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. Whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military. Whereas American women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognizes the month of March 2022 as Women's History Month. And be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all citizens to support and recognize women in both the public and private sectors that provide healing and hope for the betterment of all throughout the community. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board. Adopted by the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach this 8th day of March 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. All right, VSBA Equity and Education Month, Mrs. Felton.
Resolution for VSBA Equity and Education Month, March 2022. Whereas educational equity is defined as fostering a barrier-free environment whereby all students, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and disability, have the opportunity and benefit of a high quality and effective and inclusive learning environment. And whereas it is important for Virginia Beach families, students, teachers, and school administrators be responsive to the diverse needs of the school community and to encourage courageous conversations of the real or perceived inequity that impacts members of our school community. And whereas the Division Educational Equity Policy 5-4 and equity emphasizes outlined in the strategic framework anchor our commitment to educational equity and accountability. And whereas we continue take proactive action to advance educational equity in our division as evidenced by our recent equity assessment and development of an equity plan. And whereas the promise of public education is for every child to be successful in school and life, and whereas the division will continue to take proactive actions and seek feedback from stakeholders to advance education equity. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognize the month of March 2022 as VSBA Equity in Education Month, and it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach encourage all citizens to support and keep education equity centered in the work of the division and evidence throughout the community, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted on School Board of the City of Virginia Beach this 8th day of March 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the consent item agendas as presented. Mrs. Riggs, and a second. Mrs. Manning. All in favor, kindly show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And now that brings us to the action section of the agenda, and we begin with the personnel report and administrative appointments, which were part of the SharePoint package. So a motion to approve. Mrs. Holtz, a second. Mrs. Anderson, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please show a raised hand with your approval for those who approve.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The motion did pass.
Thank you. And I believe, Dr. Spence, you have an introduction?
I do, yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'd
like to recognize Melissa Ingram. You all probably know Melissa. She has served a very interesting career as an architectural designer in Washington and Hawaii. She's been a community design planner for the city. She's been a data analyst for the city of Virginia Beach, for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. She's been a GIS analyst in the Office of Facilities Planning and Construction, a project manager for us in that same office. Most recently has been serving in that office as the demographer and GIS manager. And we're pleased this evening that you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the next Executive Director of Facility Services in the Office of Facility Services. Congratulations to Melissa.
Her resume was quite impressive. And she does know this is project management, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And she's done that, just so you know.
I have all the faith in the world. Congratulations.
As do we. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the budget action items here. Action item B is the resolution regarding the school operating budget for fiscal year 2023. So I will now ask Vice Chair Melnick to read the resolution regarding the operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23.
Whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, in partnership with the entire community, is to empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. And whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions. And whereas the school board has studied the proposed FY 2022-23 operating budget in view of state and federal requirements, the strategic plan, priorities, community expectations, competitive compensation for employees, and the best educational interest of its students. And whereas the proposed FY 22-23 operating budget moves all eligible employees up an experience step, 0.5%, not to exceed the top of the scale, and provides a 4.5% cost of living adjustment for all employees. And whereas the city and school revenue sharing policy provides 46.75% of certain general fund revenues to meet obligations of the school board of the City of Virginia Beach. And whereas the total funds requested for the FY 22-23 operating budget from the City of Virginia Beach to the school board of the City of Virginia Beach are $484,566,543. And whereas the debt service payment is estimated to be $50,133,654, leaving a balance of $434,432,889 to allocate between the operating budget and the capital improvement program. And now therefore be it resolved that the $434,432,889 be allocated as follows. $433,432,889 to the FY 22-23 operating budget and $1 million to schools pay-as-you-go, otherwise known as PAYGO, for the CIP. Further resolved that federal funds of $13,500,000, state funds of $420,954,476, and other local funds of $3,918,341 be added to the fiscal year 22-23 operating budget, bringing it to a total of $871,805,706. And be it further resolved that $667,182 of the school reserve special revenue fund be added to the fiscal year 22-23 operating budget, bringing the total to $872,472,888. And be it further resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach requests a lump sum appropriation of $872,472,888 from the City Council of Virginia Beach for the school board fiscal year 22-23 operating budget. And be it further resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach requests an appropriation of $223,441,178 for categorical grants and other special revenue funds comprised of categorical grants in the amount of $166,137,948. Green Run Collegiate in the amount of $4,363,929, and other special revenue funds in the amount of $52,939,301. And be it further resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach request a lump sum appropriation of $1,095,914,066 for the total of all funds, $872,472,888 for the operating budget, plus $223,441,178 for categorical grants and other special revenue funds. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of the city council, the city manager, and the city clerk, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 8th day of March, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. To open this up for discussion, I'll need a motion to approve. Mrs. Franklin, and a second, Mrs. Hughes. All right. And maybe I'll first offer to Miss Pate, if you have anything that you would like to share or comment on first.
I do not have a formal presentation this evening, Chairman Wright. We've probably given the information we have on the last 3 board meetings. We don't have a lot of additional information coming out of the General Assembly. We did receive calc tools from the House and Senate committees. Both of them will be beneficial to the school system based on the proposed budget, the way they sit right now. Certainly the governor has permission to make those changes and moving forward, and he will do that around April 11th, I believe. The Senate side looks better than the House side, and a lot of that is because the House adopted some of the governor's initial tax cuts before they went into committee, and so they had less money to work with.
All right, thank you. All right. Colleagues, any questions or comments?
Ms. Hughes.
We'll begin with Mrs. Hughes.
I just have one, and I know that this is an incredibly small part of the budget, but I was taught you watch your pennies and the dollars will follow. I have sent emails, I have asked questions verbally, I've asked during this meeting about VSBA membership. While it's really a very, very small amount of this budget, the amount that we pay them is slightly less than what it costs to educate a child for a year. I know that it's already accounted for in our budget, but prior to us being obligated to them for another year, I would like for us to vote on whether or not we're going to renew. That should be done yearly. And since we've already accounted for it, if the vote is no, we can reallocate that money maybe towards students. Otherwise, it's already in the budget. I have tried to ask before now, but I just haven't gotten any answers.
So there's a motion on the floor.
Right. Okay. I knew that was a pending question. I didn't realize that it was going to be brought up in this context, that we would consider this question moving forward. Your original question was whether this would be an annual approval, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think it should be
yes.
an annual approval, but because it is part of what we've budgeted for, and no one's answered me over the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks that I've been asking, I'm just trying to get some clarification. When are we obligated to pay them? Can we vote on it, and can that money be reallocated if the majority votes no?
Madam Clerk, the dues for VSBA are due.
We usually get the bill, I want to say the beginning of, it's for a year, so it would start July 1. So we usually get the bill around June. And I did send an email regarding the amount, which was like 13, around, I think,
I think
13,000.
13,884.
So it's entirely, I do it on the direction of the board.
So are you making a motion right now to vote on this?
If the bill comes in June, I'm fine if we vote on it in May. I just want that to be on the radar before we're
Yes.
obligated.
And
Because
that
that's part
was-
of our budget planning. That's something we spend money on. So,
So this will be addressed
okay.
before the end of the year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. There's been a lot of weeks leading up to this. Does anybody else have any? I'll just reiterate about the continued priority of teacher compensation and how this is, one step in the journey, and to remind us and the public of the compensation study that we'll be looking forward to. But I think for me, someone like me who's been on the board for a number of years, the reclassification of teacher assistants and security assistants to a uniform higher pay grade is very welcome and very overdue. And it's been shared too, how that will also give administrators more flexibility with assigning these positions. And that really puts them in line with some of the adjustments that were made in the recent past with bus drivers and custodians, as was noted in the superintendent's Sion report. And beginning the process too to elevate advanced degrees, which I know a number of us have, there's been a common interest in that for our faculty. A permanent raise in the substitute pay to 115. We know it was a temporary raise at the height of COVID. And the healthcare costs, which we've brought up every week, but I think it deserves a repeat again of just the investment in lowering those health cost premiums. That will be a definite, definitely evident in the pocketbooks of our teachers and employees.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning healthcare again.
Can you share with us okay, Dr. Spence.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a second. I know you're getting ready to vote, just to express my appreciation for the board's conversations around this budget, for the opportunity to develop that in tandem with the PPMC. And also want to state two things. One, it's a great budget. And I hope people recognize that. It really is a great budget. So, I know there's always the obligation to be terrific stewards of the funds. And it's also important to recognize that we're in a strong financial position as a school division because of that good stewardship, and also because this is a great fiscal year coming up in terms of the projections. And so those are good things. And we want to make sure that the public also has confidence that we understand in planning for budgets that there are contingencies that we have to be aware of. One right now, for example, would be the rise in fuel costs, which will certainly impact us now and may impact us as we head into the new school year. That is something that as we steward those funds and talk about reserves, those are the reasons we have those conversations. And so we want to assure the board and our community that sound financial stewardship is a top priority for the administration and also for the school board. And the second thing I wanted to say really is I want to acknowledge Crystal Pate and the fact that this is her first budget process as CFO. And I think that she has done an outstanding job marshaling this through with her team, and she has an incredible team who you all got to meet, I know, in previous weeks. But that is not an easy thing to do, and especially in a school system of this size and scale. And I just want to acknowledge her leadership in the process. So, Crystal, thank you for what you do.
This is a cupcake question. Can you go through with us all and the public the timeline from here on in? Just would be a good reminder for everybody.
Sure. So again, the governor has some options to make some changes, but there will be pages out of the CEON that will go to City Council along with this resolution. We are to present to City Council on April 19th. That's the estimated date that was given, about 2 o'clock, that we'll present to City Council. And they will be incorporating our budget into their budget and voting on that by May 15th.
Thank you. All right then, hearing no further comment, all in favor of the school operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23, the resolution read by Mrs. Melnick, please show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The resolution did pass.
That's great. Thank you all. Part B, resolution regarding capital improvement program for fiscal year 22-23 through fiscal year 2027-28. So this is a 5-year plan. And at this time, I would again ask Mrs. Melnick to read this resolution.
Whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, in partnership with the entire community, is to empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions, and whereas the primary funding sources for the capital improvement program are charter bonds, public facility revenue bonds, and reversion funding. And whereas the city school revenue sharing policy provides 46.75% of certain general fund revenues to meet obligations of the school board of the City of Virginia Beach. And whereas the city school revenue sharing policy allocates funds first to debt service, while the balance is used for the operating budget and the CIP. And whereas $1 million will be allocated to schools pay-as-you-go, PAYGO, for the CIP. Whereas the school board has comprehensively reviewed all sources of funding, projected various scenarios, and prioritized the needs of the operating and CIP budgets. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach adopts a CIP program of $646,751,501 as shown on the attached school board funding summary and project summary alternative A dated March 8th, 2022, and be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of city council, the city manager, and the city clerk, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 8th day of March, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. So again, to open this up for discussion, I call for a motion to approve. Mrs. Anderson, and a second. Mrs. Riggs. I guess Mr. Freeman is here. Do you have anything before I open this up for comment?
Nothing to share. We've given you the brief, answered the questions if you hadn't, but happy to take any more questions you have tonight.
Okay. Colleagues? I'll go ahead and emphasize that this is really a combination of new construction and maintenance. And I think it's the maintenance piece that, doesn't get the attention it deserves, because we have a lot of buildings, and the CEON mentions 11 million square feet of space. That's a lot of maintenance. And it's expensive. I mean, we know what a roof costs for our homes, and just a single school roof, and we have 86 schools, and that's not counting the other buildings and all that's being done. Also, I think that the division does a pretty fair job of recognizing when you have 86 schools, you're always going to have the newest school and the oldest school, and everything else is in between that. We try to be fair with how we distribute those funds, recognizing that some of the older schools need a little love too. And whether it was the order of the turf fields, where it was some of our oldest schools who got those first, to things like the locker removal to widen the hallways and the gym and bleacher restorations. And I just think it needs to be said that we do try to spread the love to everybody in that regard. So having said that, though, we don't want to overlook the bells and whistles of the new construction. And again, the CEON mentions For the first time in more than a decade, this year's CIP provides an opportunity to make more aggressive gains in our modernization and replacement program. To that end, this proposed CIP fully funds the Princess Anne High School and the B.F. Williams Bayside sixth grade campus. So I'll repeat that, fully funds. And further, the increased funding for the replacement of Bayside High School. And we know that construction of the Lynn Haven Middle School classroom for Achievable Dream is funded and underway. So those are all very significant, and they've been a long time coming. And it's nice to be in this place right now. And, and we do have city council and to thank for a lot of this. And then the conversation continues about, more support from other levels of government. That's for another time and place. But I think we should take this opportunity to thank our city council counterparts.
Very nice.
So, Dr. Spence, what do you care to add about this?
Nope. At the risk of repeating myself, this is a really good budget. And I think the board should be really pleased with the CIP and precisely as you've described. And I appreciate your acknowledging the support from council because that really does matter to get this done. So.
Yeah.
All right, then. The motion's is on the floor. So again, this is a vote on the motion to approve the capital improvement program for fiscal year 22-23 through 27-28 as presented. All in favor, show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The resolution did pass.
Thank you all. And our last agenda item before we get to committee reports is the school calendar, the last action item of the evening. And this is to bring for those in the public who haven't been following along, at the last meeting, the calendar was approved for the next year, 2022-23. And tonight we'll take a motion and a second for discussion on the school calendar for 23-24, the calendar that was posted. So a motion to approve. Ms. Owens, and a second, Mrs. Hughes. All right, and Dr. Saltner, do you have anything to share before we open it up for further?
I'll, if I may, just go over a brief summary with only 3 slides, or 2 slides, and turn it to you. Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, board members, Dr. Spence, Gene Saltner, Chief Schools Officer. I'm here with you again this evening to talk about the proposed calendar for the 23-24 school year. Here's the story. I think that we put it in a nutshell with Ms. Rye just a few moments ago. But on February 8th, I gave you an informational presentation. I offered calendar options. And I returned February 22nd with edits which you requested, in addition to a pre-Labor Day calendar option for 23-24, which you also called for. You approved the 22-23 calendar, and you deferred until this meeting a vote on the pre-Labor Day 23-24 calendar. While the majority favored the pre-Labor Day start, you indicated at our last meeting you preferred to speak with the Virginia Beach Hotel and Restaurant Association before voting. So here it is, the one we are asking you to adopt for the 23-24 school year, the one which you deferred to this meeting. This is the option which eases us into the pre-Labor Day start. In fact, the first day of school, August 28th, is just 5 days sooner than a post-Labor Day start. This earlier start date also provides a small head start for courses associated with IB and AP testing, while better aligning with districts throughout the state and our nation. The calendar places an emphasis on extending some of our breaks while acknowledging we must have 181 instructional days and 12 staff days. More importantly, Feedback from staff for a more optimal distribution of these staff days throughout the year is included. And it also includes the board's request for the addition of 2 flex days. You are also aware, no doubt, that the majority of Peninsula schools from Williamsburg to Newport News will now begin classes 1 week earlier, adding to the 81% of school districts in Virginia, which started pre-Labor Day this past school year. Our neighboring resort areas in the Outer Banks also do the same. You heard a speaker tonight who was opposed, but I know you are familiar with our survey results. 52% of respondents supported a pre-Labor Day start for next year, and up to 64% for 23-24. I am aware that there were 19,527 responses, an extremely high return rate for such a survey. I'll conclude by asking you to determine if we'll move forward with this pre-Labor Day start. We've had discussions. It's time for a decision for or against, and I will look for your vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll start with Mrs. Anderson.
So, we delayed the vote on this because we wanted to, give the, Hotel Motel, Restaurant Association time to, have more time to give us their response on this. And so the letter that we received, basically, they did say that while they were still not in favor of a pre-Labor Day start, that they, if we had to do it, that they acknowledged the fact that they were okay with the fact that, in fact, they were happy about the fact that if we have to do a pre-Labor Day start, that they were happy that we would at least have a 4-day weekend on Labor Day weekend. So I felt like, that was their acknowledgement that, we're doing the best we can. And while they realize that, education is a top priority, especially for us, it is for them too. And we don't want to do anything to jeopardize the monetary impact of what happens that week before Labor Day. I do feel like that this pre-Labor Day start is sort of like we've kind of compromised. We didn't go 2 weeks ahead of time. We only went 1 week ahead of Labor Day. And then the fact that we have the 4-day weekend on Labor Day weekend, I think that helps a lot. I'm in favor of this calendar. I do have one question. We have 181 days in this calendar. Is there any room anywhere if we decide somewhere down the road to do an early release day added in? And not that I'm asking for that now, I'm just saying that this year, for example, we did a couple of early release days, a few early releases on Wednesdays. Is there any room in this calendar that if we decide to do that next year, adding it in there somewhere, that we can do that? Is that possible for the number of hours?
Ms. Anderson, it's very possible, but it's problematic.
Okay.
With our shortage of bus drivers, we were unable to transport students to some of our centers. In fact, with those early release days, we had students who were excluded from classes at ATC, VOTEC,
Right.
Governor School. So I would say yes, it could be done on almost any date. However, it's extremely problematic and does not work best for our students.
Okay, I understand that. I just
Thank you.
wanted to clarify that because I didn't want our teachers to think that we were ignoring their pleas for more time. But I want them to also understand that we do listen to their needs. And if that it comes to be that we feel like we need to add another, and I'm not saying every Wednesday like we did for the first semester this year. I'm just indicating that we might feel a need to accommodate those needs next year during the year.
I believe we've done a really fine job of accommodating some of the teacher requests, and that was the days at the end of each quarter for staff days,
Right.
the double days for elementary conferences for the 4x4 schedule. Done a pretty good job of providing those things, but I don't know that it's very realistic, except where we have a holiday, to do those early releases.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. And I will
And I
point out-
do appreciate the flex days being added in there because I do feel like that accommodates a lot of teachers who are able to do, for example, conferences. They might have to do conferences after school hours to accommodate their parents. So as long as I feel like as long as we know that they're going to be documenting their time, we're able to accommodate that and allow them to have those flex days. I think that's very important to have in the calendar.
Allow me, Ms. Anderson, to reiterate what you did, and from the letter, which I hold here. However, the 1 week pre-Labor Day start with a 4-day weekend for Labor Day would be preferred if the school board feels they must approve a pre-Labor Day start. And that's from the letter that we received
Thank you.
dated March 4th. Thank you kindly
you.
for bringing that up.
That's all I had to say. Thank you.
All right, we have Mrs. Hughes and then Mrs. Melnick.
I like this calendar and I like the pre-Labor Day start. I do think
Say
it's
no
a
more.
compromise.
We'll approve it.
And I really appreciate all the work that's been put into it. We've gone back and forth a lot and looked for tweaks because we want to start earlier, end earlier, but have longer vacations and flex days and everything that's not possible to do all at once. But the citizen we had, Mrs. Wicks, that spoke about the calendar, actually, she said she was in favor of the earlier start, but she had some questions about, she said, preloading.
We had in our past year's calendar, I believe 7 days prior to the start of the school year. Teachers felt that those were preloaded at the beginning of the year or front-loaded where they needed them inside the calendar at the end of each marking period. And that's precisely why we went back to the 5 days and moved those inside the calendar. Of course, to move them inside also pushes you back. So for every day that we put in there that's a staff day, it's going to push that further back, but we do have to have those 12 days.
So that's been more or less addressed with this calendar.
Yes, it has.
Okay, good to go.
Mrs. Melnick, then Mrs. Manning.
So I think it's important to acknowledge the Hotel Motel Association and our restaurant associations, as we have always worked closely with them. I mean, we benefit, monetarily from them, and I, as a business owner, understand the woes of staffing. It is very difficult, but I talked to John Zirkle and from the association here locally, and one of the things that he mentioned was how important the last couple of weeks of summer are to them, and that's a really busy time for them. And when you listen to that, you can understand how this is a change for them, and I've lived here almost my whole life, and we've always started school after Labor Day, and that this is a change, it's a shift, and they knew it was coming eventually. But we are also in a position ourselves that we've never been here before either. So staffing issues ourselves, burnout, teacher burnout, and quite frankly the national teacher shortage. And it's important for us now to do what we can for all of our employees. And that's a week early. And so I'm glad to see their response in the letter, and that hopefully we can keep it like this and continue to work together for all citizens in Virginia Beach.
Ms. Melnick, we surveyed our teacher assembly, our calendar committee teachers, and they all desperately needed those days that we've added at the end of each quarter, and those double days for conferences and for the new schedule that we'll introduce next year.
And we hear it, every single one of us hear it, and I hope they know that we're answering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Manning and then Ms. Owens.
Yeah, so I also believe it's important for us to include our hospitality associations in this. And, I think that this is a good compromise for that with the 4-day weekend for Labor Day. We're starting a few days earlier, but we're also ending a few days earlier. So I think that's important. I think going forward, we need to keep the 2-year model. And I know we got away from that for good reasons. But I do think that we need to keep that 2-year model. And, you know, if we are going to start earlier, we need to end earlier as well for that reason, for the hospitality associations that are very important to us. And I really appreciated Ms. Wick's comments, feedback that she sent us. She seems very good at this. So perhaps we should include her on our calendar committee next year. She might kill me.
2 years from now.
2 years from now. She might kill me for that, but I thought I'd
She has
throw that-
offered to do so.
Okay,
Told
great.
her the name got passed on.
Wonderful. Okay, you know, because I love it when people bring ideas to us and also solutions, which is what she did. So thank you. Thank you for the hard work again.
Thank you, and she did indeed bring solutions.
Can we just address that one comment that we're getting out earlier, and I don't think that we are. It says the 14th, I think that's just where it fell, but technically we're adding longer breaks, but it's essentially the same start and end date.
So
I mean, we're
point
starting
out
earlier,
that,
but
yes, we are essentially in the same place.
Yeah.
If we had a post-Labor Day start, we would be towards almost a week later. And that's, I think, what Ms. Manning is referring to. There was a concern regarding the fact that the last day does not provide an additional day to bring staff back on Monday for a staff day. And that, again, is teacher feedback. And they are accustomed to closing out on that last day. And generally, when we have had that day, it's been a flex day, and very few teachers would work that day.
I just don't ever remember going to the 21st of June, but I would,
It generally is driven by when we start.
yeah, okay.
So we definitely, when we've had some later Labor Days, we've definitely gone later into the calendar.
Okay, Miss Owens.
Thank you, and I won't belabor the point. I appreciate
Thank
this
you.
calendar. I think that it was a good compromise and that we, when I say we, you all who did the work, did the best that we could get with all of the different demands. I am still jealous of some other localities being able to fit more minutes into their day and the busing situation being different. And I know that we have specific restrictions with the setup of our district. I would like it, though, if we could just continue to keep it on our radar as we're moving forward and just kind of look at it each time. Is there a way that we can add 4 minutes onto our school day and be able to manage our busing situation to then pull some days from the end or to extend our breaks to get some of the more of the perks that some of the other districts who are able to accommodate that are able to get from it? I know that there's a lot of factors that are involved in that with the staffing of busing and all of that, but it would make me happy to know that we're just continuing to keep that in mind each time and to weigh it out as a possibility if possible.
We will do so, and you'll probably recall that we realized our middle schoolers would be getting home after 5 p.m. if we
Right.
start adding minutes to a day. It's our 4-tier system
Right.
that creates this issue that we can't mimic some of the other school districts.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The queue has disappeared. Oh, it was Mrs. Riggs, okay.
Just real quick, thank you so much. I love this calendar. And I like the idea that let's reach out and say, Ms. Wicks, please, you've got some great ideas. She's been on Hampton's calendar committee before when she taught there, so let's bring her on. I like the compromise that we gave the hotel association, the 4 days. I think that's because that's a big weekend, and I think that helps a lot too. But thank you and you, like you said, the teachers spoke. And I have to say, being a teacher, I know it helps to have a little bit of extra time at the end to close it, but we all have it. We all know how to close that day off, and we all do it. We've done it, and we work it out. So I don't think that's gonna, they're gonna be upset about that. I think
No,
they
I
can.
bet they knocked down the doors like you did.
Yeah, they can handle it. And I tell you, I was the one that stayed there the longest, but they all were gone before me, but they got it made, so they know what to do. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, then, all in favor of the school calendar 2023-24 as presented in our packet, please show a raised hand.
Madam Chair, we have 10 ayes. The calendar did pass.
Very good.
Thank you, and we're close to being done. We have our committee, organization, or board reports, so who would like to begin? Mrs. Manning.
Yes, so the Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities has its annual awards ceremony this March 17th. It's going to be at Williams Farm Recreation Center at 4 p.m. This is, they do this every year, and it's an award given to people in our community who go above and beyond for people with special needs in our community. And so if you're interested, it's open to the public to come to that award ceremony March 17th at 4 p.m. at Williams Farm Rec Center.
Do you know, is an RSVP asked for, or?
I don't think there is, but if you want to go ahead and just pass along your information to me, I can let them know.
Okay, ladies. Anybody else? Miss Owens.
Thank you. And this isn't exactly a committee, so perhaps as a point of personal privilege, I just wanted to mention the Green Run High School National Junior ROTC. They are coming up for another national championship. I know that we're going to be recognizing them at a meeting in the future, but I wanted to point out that they are trying to fundraise for that trip, and they haven't been able to fundraise the same way that they might have been able to pre-COVID. And in our military community, I know that there are supports, and we're trying to reach out and get them connected to some sponsors, and I will be having some information on my Twitter page for people to be able to reach out and donate to help make that trip achievable for those students. They are 9-time defending area drill athletic champions, and we don't have many teams that we can say are 9-time regional champions, and so I just want us to keep them in mind, and please see how we can support them. Sure, I'll send it via email, and I know they are getting the information for, I think, next meeting for us to recognize them, but I know 2 weeks out to the next meeting is time that they could use to fundraise because that championship is coming up in Florida. Thank you.
Mrs. Riggs.
Okay, Sister Cities Youth Ambassador Competition Art Show is on.
Sorry.
And I'll have tickets to sell to hopefully everyone that would like to support this. It is going to be on the 22nd of April at the Zyder Theater. We have 9 applicants. We're so excited. So all kinds of cool skills and talents will be presented at that show. So we're looking forward to it. And like I said, I'll
We
let you
still
know.
need.
We still need the art, but we'll get it. I know we will. I know that Chris Buhner put it in his what do you call it? His week. I think he does a weekly newsletter. That's it. Newsletter. It's getting late. Thank you, Dr. Spence. His weekly newsletter or monthly, I don't know when he does it, but he put it in last week for us. So that'll encourage people too. And like the high school teacher said, these kids wait till the last minute, but I feel confident we'll have our kids be in the art competition.
Because they can win money.
Yeah, it's a money
Scholarship
competition,
money.
and it's for the art part. For the youth ambassador, it's for scholarships towards their college. So $2,500 for first place, $2,000 for second, and $1,000 for third. So, and then for the art competition, we've got both the division between the 8th and 9th grade, the upcoming 8th graders, the 9th graders, and 10th through 12th. We added the 12th grade to the art competition. And that's like $500. I mean, it's a great way for the kids to and incentivize them to join, because they get really excited, from what I understand from the art teachers, about winning something. Even just winning a gift card, the teachers have said the kids get excited. So I feel confident we'll have some students. That part is not up. The due date for the art competition is the 15th of March, so they still have some time.
And what's the date again of the
22nd.
competition? The 20
the 22nd is the
of April.
of April.
22nd of April. So
Mhm.
mark your
At
calendars.
6:30 at Zyder. So, and Zyder's going to show all of the art entries, the winners, for a week, actually 2 weeks. So that's a great way to showcase our students and all the great things they do, because we have some great artists out there and some great talent, as we hear all the time. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun.
We'll have tickets to sell.
Yeah, we will.
Next meeting.
So thank you. Any questions you have, just let me know, but I'd love to see all of us there supporting them. Thank you.
And finally, the Green Run Collegiate Gala, April 2nd. Any school board member who has not purchased a ticket that would like to, please let me know. And you can visit Green Run Collegiate's website for further information.
I guess quickly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that you could spend the entire day together, because April 2nd is also the Pearls of Wisdom Oyster Roast for our
And many
Virginia
board
Beach
members
Education
will be.
Foundation, and hopefully you're also considering attending that.
Yeah.
I mentioned that last week, but thank you for the extra plug on that. Okay. All right then, safe travels home, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.